The story begins at the border of the Kazel territory, where land was ravaged by a severe drought, and it led everyone to despair due to the scarcity of water. The well was dry as one of the villagers looked on with a look of terror in his eyes. The fields, completely cracked, made any kind of agriculture impossible. Not only humans, but even the animals were succumbing to dehydration. In this tragedy, the villagers knew they had to flee, but this was not simple, as the Marquis of Kazel considered fleeing a serious offense. He sends his soldiers to punish with execution anyone who tries to escape. One of the soldiers approaches and slits the throat of a man, while the rest of the villagers begin to run in panic. Among them, a small child tries to escape but stumbles along the way. Turning around with eyes full of terror, the child begs for help, as the soldier raises his sword in the air toward the child's eye. Tragically, no one is able to save her, and she is executed right there. The one who led this attack was the Marquis' son, a powerful mage who claims to have the blood of the divine kings running through his veins. With an expression of irritation, he asserts that even beasts should show gratitude, questioning the citizens if they don't understand why they're still alive. Even so, they try to escape just because it hasn't rained for some time, and he then asks why they are so ungrateful and insolent. A woman in tears embraces her son and begs for forgiveness, asking that if she is to be executed, at least spare her son's life. However, a soldier orders her to be quiet and strikes her in the back with a spear, almost knocking her down. The blow, instead of just knocking her down, spreads the blood of the child, staining them with the suffering of their mother. As the woman falls to the ground, the child begins to crawl, trying to get away from the lifeless body. Klee, observing the scene, questions the soldier about such negligence, criticizing him for not making this situation more entertaining. The soldier, embarrassed, apologizes for the lack of creativity and asks what he could do to entertain him better. In response, Klee smiles maliciously. The situation becomes even crueler when the soldiers begin to hang the villagers, turning the suffering into a macabre spectacle. To make matters worse, the villagers are forced to bear the weight of their own loved ones, for if they fail, they will perish. The scene is dark and perverse, reflecting the extreme cruelty of the Marquis' son. One of the soldiers calls for the young master, who turns to listen to what he has to say. The soldier explains that the man will bleed to death before they can do anything else, and it would be better to enjoy it while he is still alive. The woman, overwhelmed with despair, cries while holding her husband, trembling and pleading for them to stop. In a desperate act, she runs to one of the soldiers, trying to convince him with pleas. The soldier, merciless, slaps her and orders her to step away. The woman, with tears streaming, holds her bruised face and calls for her husband, who is already bound by several ropes to the same tree where the others had been. As the scene unfolds, the Marquis' son laughs and comments that all of this is truly magnificent. While he mocks, the woman continues to hold her husband, trying to support him amidst her tears. The young master, with an ironic tone, praises her effort, saying she is doing a great job. He even adds that she should keep holding her husband, for without her support, the wound will open and he will eventually die. We see the woman trembling as she holds her husband's body, trying to keep him steady. At this moment, a male voice interrupts, asking the young master to stop treating the blood of the divine king with such irreverence. When he turns to identify the owner of the voice, he spots a knight approaching. We find out his name is Zebek. He positions himself directly in front of the young master, revealing himself to be, in fact, his sword instructor. During the confrontation, Zebek questions whether it is really necessary to go to such extremes to punish people. He argues that as someone who has inherited the blood of a divine king, the young master should at least act with more dignity. Have some dignity, declares the young master, adding that his honor will remain intact as long as no one knows what is happening there. He asserts that the citizens are fools for trying to escape just because it hasn't rained recently. He then asks Zebek what he plans to do and if he will be the one to spread this information. With a sarcastic tone, he comments that there is no way a knight recognized by the Church of the King would dare oppose someone with divine blood. Zebek responds calmly, simply stating that the truth cannot be hidden forever. The young master sighs, but his expression shows increasing irritation. A soldier suggests that they should simply kill Zebek, but the young master requests a whip instead. At once, the whip is handed to him, and he uses it to begin whipping the woman holding her husband. Zebek watches the scene in shock, unable to act, merely watching helplessly, as the woman is repeatedly whipped. After some time, the young master is panting. He then begins to smile with a tone of psychopathy, until he comments that it is truly fascinating how the woman still struggles to support her husband even while being whipped. Walking with a smile on his face, he tells Zebek that he should also enjoy himself and take advantage of life while he can. Zebek, on the other hand, observes the bodies scattered around, probably feeling a deep frustration. With the arrival of night, we see that some people no longer have anyone to support them, remaining hanging and lifeless. Some have passed out, exhausted from dehydration. Jan, with difficulty, tells his beloved Safia that she should flee and admits that he was wrong before. She, however, shakes her head, tightening her embrace around him even more. With a weak voice, she asks if the Emperor's herald will really appear while holding a coin. She then looks to the horizon, seeking answers. After some time, Safia passes out from the pain, but soon we see someone offering her water to revive her. She begins to cough from choking on the water, until she opens her eyes and, to her surprise, realizes that Zebek is standing before her, asking her to be quiet. He asks if she can eat, holding a spoon of food, while he begins to care for her so that she can regain her strength. We find out that he used his cloak as an improvised blanket. He even stood guard while Safia slept. Noticing the sunrise, Zebek realizes it's time to leave. Not very pleased, he wakes Safia up. He explains that he arrived unseen, but now he needs to leave before he is discovered, as he will be punished if anyone knows of his presence. As he speaks, he makes a pained expression and apologizes for Safia's engagement, saying there is no need to hold on to him anymore. We see that he has improvised a support to hold the man up with a piece of wood, but we don't know if Jan is still alive. Safia's eyes show pure terror as she lets the piece of wood fall, even surprising Zebek a great night. He watches her struggle to hold her husband. In her desperation, she asks his name, promising to inform the Herald clan to spare him when they arrive. The mention of the name irritates him slightly, and Zebek questions whether she is referring to the exterminators of sanctity. He states that they are soulless heretics and asks if she is the one who hired them. Safia gestures affirmatively with her head. Zebek comments that he doesn't know if these people truly exist, even though the young master commands 20 well-armed soldiers. Additionally, he himself couldn't defeat them alone, not to mention that Klee also has blue blood in his veins. He further emphasizes that Safia must be aware of the incredible power of divine blood, especially the blood of the Jaegas. Safia responds, asserting that even though he's a mage, a Herald clan can defeat him, as they too have magical abilities. She explains that they are called the exterminators of sanctity because they earned this title after killing kings who possessed divine blood. Zebek shakes his head and comments that Safia is clearly not in a stable mental state, which is understandable after so much trauma. With a formal gesture, he finally introduces himself, revealing that his name is Zebek and that he is a holy knight of the church. He doesn't reveal his name so that she will beg the exterminators of sanctity for his life. She listens to what he says even though she is on the verge of collapse. Zebek stresses that even if they come, he will fight with all his strength. Before leaving, he says that he will return at night to check on how she is. As he moves away, Safia shows anguish, but tries to keep her strength, repeating to herself that she only needs to hold out for 2 more days. Looking at the Herald clan symbol on the ground, she reinforces that 2 days will be enough. The narrative takes us back to a time before the drought, to a farm where Safia and Jan were talking. Jan hands something to Safia, which appears to be a coin. Curious, she wonders what it is. Jan asks if she has ever heard of the Herald clan. Safia replies affirmatively, explaining that her father used to tell stories about them when she was younger. According to her father, all the members of the Herald clan had no soul. Jan confirms this and explains that the gold coin Safia is holding is known as the Emperor's Gold, capable of summoning those without souls. However, he warns of the danger, as if anyone from the king's church saw her with such an object, the heretic interrogators would execute her. Jan then gives her a kiss on the cheek, making Safia extremely embarrassed. With a slight smile, she asks why he would give her something so dangerous as a gift. He replies that it's only for severe emergencies in case something happens to them. Jan explains that if she draws a triangle on the ground and places the coin in the center, a herald will come to help her, although he hopes that will never be necessary. Safia understands the meaning as she looks at the triangle drawn on the ground, repeating to herself that 2 days is all she needs to endure. Her husband's body begins to attract flies, but she remains determined. Another day passes and Safia insists that just 1 more day will be enough. She looks at the sun and says that if she can hold on, everything will be fine, although her body is about to give in. With blurry vision, she collapses on the ground, a victim of dehydration. Safia dies but maintains her determination until the end. The story returns to a forward post where the soldiers are cleaning themselves after the massacre in the village. Zebek is there too, looking at the sun and commenting that the day is exceptionally hot. Klee approaches and asks why Zebek isn't smiling yet, stating that he should be having a lot of fun with all of this. Zebek replies that if they keep killing the citizens, there will be no one left to collect taxes from. Klee retorts, saying that the discontented have already left and there won't be much to collect anyway, as the villagers are stealing from each other. Zebek, with clenched fists, argues that the Marquess's territory has fertile soil and the people could be evacuated, avoiding such suffering. Klee states that suffering is necessary for the villagers are ungrateful, and if they don't suffer, they'll ruin agriculture and escape, just like they tried to do now. Zebek tries to explain that agriculture won't be harmed as it depends on individual skills, but Klee abruptly interrupts him. Klee declares that agriculture depends, in fact, on the soil, the climate, and the light of the king, stressing that Zebek must have learned that from the church, laughing sarcastically. Zebek shows irritation but remains silent, while Klee gets closer, staring at him intently. Klee asserts that the drought they face is a punishment for the betrayal of the king's church, something clear in the doctrine. Zebek calmly responds, saying that this interpretation is quite broad. Klee tells him that someone made the soil fertile and someone else calmed the drought. They must punish the sinners and those who tried to escape and destroy their lands, while those who helped enrich the soil deserve to be rewarded with land. He does this to save the people, and if Xebec wants to go against his orders and save the villagers, he must do his best. Klee starts walking, while Xebec stands still, not saying a word. The story then returns to some slums in the border territory, where more citizens have died due to dehydration. Xebec approaches the hill where he left Sophia, and when he looks, his eyes fill with pain. Looking up, he sees her body on the ground and clenches his fist in anger, saying that in the end, she couldn't hold on. He believes that even if the heralds arrived now, it would be useless, as most of the villagers had already died. As he gazes at Sophia's corpse, he starts to sense a sinister presence, and immediately, someone appears behind him, with a sword pointed at his neck. The person warns him that they will bring him down if he moves, asking Xebec not to turn around. Xebec, sensing the ghostly aura of the individual, deduces that he must be a herald. The being asks if the man is a knight or part of a rescue team, to which Xebec confirms that he is a holy knight. The man asks, as a precaution, if he didn't have any contract, saying it would be interesting if a knight from the king's church requested a contract there. Xebec, irritated, asks if the man is mocking him. The man reflects for a moment, saying that the girl was his contractor and that she was already dead, so he got a gold coin for free. He asks what happened there. Xebec responds that if the man sheathes his sword and steps back, he will tell the truth in exchange for his honor. The man smiles and nods, using his ghostly aura to considerably increase the distance between them. Xebec, surprised by the speed of the movement, wonders if the man is truly a ghost. The man sheathes his sword and says that it seems Xebec believes he would have been defeated if he hadn't ambushed him. But it's fine, because if Xebec is a holy knight, at least he has courage. Xebec asks the man if he's a mage, but the other responds that everyone in the Herald clan is except for him. Confused, the swordsman questions whether what the man did earlier was not magic. The interlocutor then explains that it must be difficult for someone like him to distinguish between superhuman physical strength and magic. Still intrigued, Xebec asks the man's name and his classification as a herald. The stranger remains silent for a few moments. Then he insists, stating that he has already revealed who he is and where he comes from. In response, the man ironically asks if Xebec truly said that, as he didn't hear it. Finally, he introduces himself. "My name is Azadin, of the 108 Spirits, the Herald of the Emperor." Xebec notes that the 108 Spirits is the lowest position, but the movement demonstrated by Azadin proves that he is far from ordinary. Azadin takes the opportunity to remind Xebec that he had promised to tell what happened there. After a brief silence, both observe the territory from above. The herald comments that the story is indeed impressive. Soon, a different voice is heard announcing that the contract has been completed. Xebec feels something strange in the air and sees a bird flying above. The bird lands on Azadin's shoulder and informs him that he got free coins because the requester is dead. Surprised to hear the owl speak, Xebec listens as it says that it's time to move on to fulfill another mission, and there's no time for rest. The bird instructs Azadin to go ahead. He clicks his tongue and begins to walk, but the swordsman asks him to wait, questioning if he will really leave after receiving his reward for the requester's death. Azadin, with a curious tone, asks if Xebec wants the request to be fulfilled, finding it strange as he believes the master will suffer the consequences. Firmly, Xebec responds that this won't happen and calls the herald soulless. The swordsman draws his sword and points it at Azadin, declaring that he will defeat him right then and there. Azadin, with an ironic smile, comments that it's funny to see him try to stop him with a simple sword. He highlights that Xebec stayed silent in the face of so many injustices, and that even he considers it lamentable. These words start to irritate Xebec, but soon the irritation grows into uncontrollable fury. The herald then asks if the swordsman's anger is directed at him or himself for turning his back after witnessing the atrocities committed. Indignant, Xebec demands to know what Azadin really knows about it. Azadin calmly asks if Xebec knows the constellations in the night sky and how each one has a different meaning. Xebec, bewildered, asks why Azadin is talking about this, questioning his intent. Azadin explains that humans can see the same thing, but their perceptions can be completely distinct. For some, a constellation may represent the protagonist of a myth, while for others, it may just be a faint, pale light in the darkness. In the same way, the view of the devastating events may seem different to Xebec compared to the other soldiers. While touching Jan's corpse, Xebec lowers his sword, saying that the situation is different because he couldn't do anything. His eyes are full of regret. He looks at his sword and then at his reflection, saying that as a knight of the king's church, he should revere those who carry the blood of the divine kings. Azadin says that if Xebec felt pity for the girl, he doesn't wish to fight him. Then he cuts the ropes on Jan and says that his sword is not his enemy. Xebec seems to be dealing with conflicting emotions, while Azadin also picks up Sophia's corpse, asking if he has a shovel. Intrigued, Xebec asks why he needs one and if he intends to bury these people, calling it madness. Azadin responds that he will give them a funeral. Xebec thinks for a moment and says that Klee wants the bodies hung on trees to send a message and prevent others from repeating what they did. Burying the bodies would be like directly challenging him. Azadin then says that if Xebec doesn't have a shovel, he cannot be helped, and begins to dig with his hands. Xebec, after a pause, tightens his grip on his blade and drives it into the ground. Azadin watches, surprised, as Xebec also begins to dig, and together together, they prepare individual graves for Safia and Yan. After some time, both finish the task, even placing small crosses on the graves. During this time, the herald says a prayer, asking the Archangel of wisdom, courage, and mercy to care for their souls. Zebek, intrigued, asks why someone from the Herald clan would use a prayer from the Order of the Saviors. With a carefree gesture, the archer explains that he simply appreciates their ideology. The swordsman comments that it is reckless to abandon the fate of his original clan and serve a faith considered heretical. In response, the other says that if one doesn't defend what they believe is right, then their birth will have no meaning at all. Curious, Zebek asks what exactly Azadin finds so fascinating about the Order of the Saviors. As he responds, Azadin turns around, taking something from his waist and beginning to adjust it. It's clear that it was a bow, worn by him like a belt, which he now prepares to use. He points it in the direction where an individual is approaching, believing that it is the one he serves. Zebek, worried, looks at the same spot and soon recognizes Klee and his soldiers. Klee, with a sarcastic smile, asks if Zebek liked the peasants so much, teasing that he should have told him before. Laughing, Klee admits that for a peasant, she was really good, but nothing more than that. Zebek comments that he should have guessed that Klee would take care of the girl, noting that he would face about 20 soldiers and wouldn't stand a chance of winning. The commander of the soldiers, still mocking, asks who the bastard next to Zebek is, while the archer begins to draw his bow. The string is released and the arrow flies directly through the ranks, hitting a man in the rear, piercing his eye. The soldier screams in agony, trembling and holding his head with his hands as chaos ensues. Zebek watches the precision of the shot, realizing that the archer struck a man from the other side of the formation. Without hesitation, he prepares another arrow and shoots again, aiming at the soldiers in the front line. The men try to raise their shields to block the attack, but one of them feels a sharp pain in his groin as he is hit. The soldier drops the shield, which cracks as it hits the ground and falls to his knees, immediately bleeding. The arrow had struck his femoral artery, leaving him in critical condition. The soldiers panic, while Zebek comments that the arrow seemed to curve like a snake as it passed through the shield. Amidst the confusion, the archer finally answers the previous question. He explains that he appreciates the Order of the Saviors because of the idea that a person's worth is not determined by birth, but by their beliefs and actions. Azadin states that someone with the blood of the divine king who commits atrocities against their people cannot be considered noble. Irritated, Klee watches as the archer prepares another arrow, saying that he shouldn't even be considered human. Then he shouts loudly, questioning what a mere peasant could possibly know. Unperturbed, the archer does not react to Klee's shout, which orders Zebek to kill that bastard immediately. Without hesitation, he leaps into the air, and Zebek, looking up, watches as the archer ascends, illuminated by the moonlight. Calmly, he prepares his bow as the soldiers, terrified, ask if they will be the next ones. An arrow is fired, hitting a man in the eye. Quickly, 2 more arrows are ready for a double shot. With precision, both arrows are fired and he begins to fall back to the ground. The soldiers, dazed, rush to intercept his landing, but the warrior lands on their spears, using them as support to stand. He shoots 3 arrows simultaneously, bringing down 3 more enemies. One of the arrows passes so close to Klee that it brushes his face. Frightened, Klee realizes that although many have been hit, only the man who was injured in his private parts has died. He now understands that the archer is only incapacitating the soldiers, allowing them to survive. A ghostly aura is released, enveloping the battlefield as cover to continue shooting and neutralizing the adversaries. Suddenly, he appears behind Klee, identifying himself as a herald. The enemy leader, overcome with terror, loses control, while the soldiers around him panic upon realizing his ruthless nature. Klee turns around to hear the voice behind him, but when the archer tries to retrieve more arrows, he finds that they are all used up. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Klee tries to attack him, but is struck directly in the face. Calmly, the archer dismantles his bow and tucks it back into his waist. As Klee screams in pain from the wound to his eye, one of the soldiers tries to attack from behind, but the blow is deflected. The archer responds with a punch to the attacker's face and grabs his sword. He explains that he used the arrows to reduce the number of enemies and challenges the soldiers to face him if they are brave enough. Soon after, he plunges the sword into the ground of one of the men, castrating him with the blow, which provokes a surprised "oh" from the others. Turning to the soldiers, it becomes clear how unpredictable and dangerous he is. The owl watches this scene as the battlefield fills with blood. Slowly advancing toward Klee, the archer states that he didn't make him wait too long. For someone like Klee, who has always caused pain to others, he explains that what happened here is far from being a sufficient punishment. Suddenly, the enemy casts a spell, releasing an intense yellow light that blinds everyone around. One of the soldiers comments that he is losing his vision, his eyes showing the effects of the spell. However, the archer seems immune to the magic. Klee, in a mocking tone, suggests that his noble blood is incomparable to his opponent's. In response, the blade swings forward and Klee's blood flies through the air. Realizing what has happened, Klee screams as he notices he has also been castrated, while blood pours down his clothes. Desperate, he begins to cry, asking what just happened. The archer, laughing, asks if he has mental problems, as he should clearly understand the situation. Taking advantage of the moment, he grabs Klee by the hair as the noble, frantic, offers money, women, and anything else the adversary might want. But the response is direct. As the exterminator of holiness, he knows heralds well and is not easily convinced. Desperate, Clay screams for Zebek, who, shamed, claims he cannot help. Still, the noble tries to appeal to his position of prestige, but the effort is futile. After reflecting, the archer states that he will continue to live, which confuses his enemy. He then raises his blade and moves toward Klee's remaining eye. The blow blinds him, and he passes out in unbearable pain. Calmly, the archer declares that even without a contractor, he considers himself to have fulfilled the Emperor's law. Zebek then begins to draw his blade from its sheath. He, a knight of the Church of the King, cannot allow someone who speaks of the Emperor's law to live, regardless of whether they have committed a just act or not. However, masked, he lowers his blade and states that he is not like the other knights of the Church of the King. Zebek shouts, asking if Azadin is insulting him. The latter responds that he is not insulting him, but praising him, as the other knights of the Church of the King are nothing more than scoundrels who were exiled from their homes due to their inheritance. Before Zebek can retort, Azadin continues, asking if he will be able to follow him, while letting out a laugh. Curious, Zebek asks what he means, but Azadin has already disappeared with his ghostly aura, saying that if fate allows, they will meet again. When the aura dissipates, Zebek sees no sign of Azadin, only spotting Klee lying on the ground. Zebek reflects that no one has been able to kill Azadin, the herald, and that, on the contrary, they have suffered permanent losses. He admits that what Azadin said about the knights was correct, and that this also applies to him. Zebek smiles slightly, feeling the weight lifting from his chest, for at least Safia and Yan have been properly avenged. The scene shifts to a group of people bowing before their lord, begging to be exempt from taxes. They explain that everyone is fleeing the village, leaving behind an abandoned place. Those who stayed are starving and returning as undead, wandering the streets. The village is infested with thieves and monsters, and no one can afford to pay the taxes due to the terrible situation. The lord waits for a moment, seeming irritated, before calling them shameless. Then none other than Klee's father, Margrave Kazel, appears. He comments that at this rate, they'll soon be asking for food too. The civilians, now fearful, realize that he is right. The man leading the group looks at him, begging, saying they are at their limit. Kazel responds that nothing will change the humble blood running through their veins, and if they wish, he can offer them relief. Surprised, they ask if he will really do this, and he smiles, affirming that he will, as long as, if they fail to fulfill his request, everyone in the room will be hanged. The question of whether they would agree goes unanswered, while the group remains silent, shocked. They exchange glances, unsure of how to react. Kazel begins to cast some sort of magic with his hand and tells them not to be afraid. He assures them that what they ask for is nothing more than a single page, as the nature of the grimoire he holds. The leader explains that they are ignorant about magic and do not know how to locate it. Kazel laughs, saying that even fools like them will be able to find the grimoire if they simply desire it. He says the grimoire will respond to their call and reveal itself. If they manage to bring him a page from the grimoire, he will exempt the village from taxes for 3 years and provide 50 bushels of wheat, barley, and oats. The civilians are surprised by the offer, and one of the men asks for at least the name of the grimoire so they can look for it. Kazel clenches his fists, making the magic disappear, and looks at them with a threatening expression. He reveals that the grimoire is a copy of the Book of the Divine King. The citizens, still shocked, leave, while Kazel remains seated on his throne. A snake slithers through the curtains and climbs up to his side. When he looks down, he sees the snake transform into an imposing woman, who says she thinks mentioning the book's name was a great imprudence. Kazel calls her absurd, stating that he knows her group is searching for the grimoire and that, in any case, rumors about it will soon spread across the continent. Therefore, it would be smarter to use the poor to find a page for her group. He asks what she wants by revealing herself. The response comes with the revelation that she has come to tell the truth, revealing that her son was a victim of all this. Before she can finish, Kazel interrupts, saying that Clay's forces would fall easily since Zebek is with them. The woman then reveals that the true opponent was actually a member of the Herald clan. Kazel's eyes light up, and he asks firmly if she is sure. The confirmation comes with the explanation that they are after the Book of the Divine King, because to free themselves from the curse of their duty, they will also meet it. Kazel asks if her son is dead, and the woman replies that he is not, but that he lost the sight in both eyes and was castrated. Visibly irritated, Kazel listens to her question, and she asks what he will do. He instructs her to send soldiers to their neighborhood to kill the herald who was sent. The woman responds that she understands and will contact the commander. Kazel grabs her hand, telling her she should ask someone else to do this, and that, if her son was castrated, he can simply make another, while pulling her to his lap. She begins to smile, but this might get awkward to show in the rest of the video. Just kidding, we didn't see anything anyway, as the scene jumps to another place in the territory. Azadin is there, showing that he has no water. He sighs, saying this is bad and that, at this rate, he'll die of thirst. He asks the owl why he had to put on a show, saying he could have done it in 2 days, calling her foolish. The owl questions if he dares speak so impertinently with the emperor's mouth. Azadin looks at the owl with a confused expression before beginning to explain in an entire wall of text how the heralds came to be. He explains that this happened happened because the emperor died without a plan, which cursed all the heralds. He continues, hitting the owl with facts and logic, asking why he had to put on a show. He mentions that he was forced to drop everything he was doing to run here as quickly as possible. Because of that, he is now about to die of thirst while still being hungry. He doesn't even think he'll be able to digest it because he is too dry. The owl apologizes, saying her servant will arrive soon. She notices something and wonders what is happening as Azadin reaches for his blade. Azadin wonders if it is a ghost as he sees a group forming before him. It is none other than Safiya and the others who were hung on the trees, all bowing respectfully to him. Azadin greets them, saying that this land has neither the light of the king's virtue nor the blessing of the archangels. Therefore, it is not good to stay there for too long. He states that he has paid his dues and must now proceed to the afterlife. Safiya then points behind him, and when he turns around, Azadin sees a well. He asks if they are trying to give him water, saying that they don't have to, and that they might as well go rest. Then he looks into the well and begins to pull up the bucket, saying that he can hardly wait to drink some water. However, as soon as he reaches the top, he is surprised, asking what that is as he sees a page in the sand. We learn more about the Herald clan, which originally was a race known as Aragasa. They crossed a massive typhoon from another continent and landed on the Wybris continent. The 8 divine kings of the Yagas family ruled the Wybris continent and occupied 8 thrones spread across the land. However, during that era, a single person monopolized each of these thrones, while the other 7 holy kings, who were brothers, were all subjugated by the emperor of the Yaslat family. We see him sitting on his throne. We learn that Emperor Yaslat wanted to rid himself of all the remnants of the deceased holy kings. Meanwhile, the outsiders, the Aragasa, who eventually became heralds, needed land to settle, and the emperor gave the outsiders the grimoires. The song of the yellow bird is a spirit called the voice of the emperor in exchange. The outsiders signed a contract with the emperor and became heralds. With that, the hands of the Aragasa were ruthlessly stained with the blood of the gods, and they became the sword and executioners of the emperor. It personally executed the wicked nobles who went against the emperor's law and prospered. It was the most horrendous sin the citizens of Wybris could commit, as they believed in the afterlife within this cycle of eternal life. After some time, the emperor died and the empire was once again split into 8 separate kingdoms. The Aragasa were despised by everyone in Wybris, and the heralds fell, being called soulless because they had sold their souls for that pouch. Despite this, they faced an unexpected problem. The contract with the emperor was still in effect even after his death. The heralds needed to serve the emperor, as the contract was eternal. All the heralds were bound by this. Azadin picks up the paper, saying that this is a page from the Book of the Divine King, feeling the power of the emperor coming from it. He then pushes Safiya and Yan aside, telling them to rest in peace while he analyzes the page. Azadin wonders if this means that by collecting this, he might escape his duty curse. The owl responds that it is rude to call it a curse, as it is an honorable contractual duty. Azadin comments that he can't believe it ended up in his hands, and that fate is no joke. Then the bird asks if he isn't happy, as this is something all heralds desire. The heralds have 2 objectives. 1, fulfill the service duties and collect 100,000 gold coins, or 2, acquire the Book of the Divine King. If they accomplish any of these objectives, it will escape the duty curse. Azadin states that this is part of his goal, but he's concerned about the spreading of this around the world. The reason the Book of the Divine King was destroyed in the first place was because of his father. As he continues walking through the desert, we see someone observing him from a distance. It seems to be a blonde woman. She tells another person that it's him, and that he is the son of the worst traitor of the clan. Azadin is also talented, powerless, and stupid. She asked a man beside her if he really can't use magic, as the rumors say, claiming that he is cursed. The man says he doesn't know if he's cursed, but he knows for sure that Azadin can't use magic. But the woman comments that she heard he wet the bed until he was 8 and can't even tie a bowstring. She doubts Azadin will ever be able to fulfill the herald duty. The man calls her, and we discover the woman's name is Midian. The guy suggests they should go back, as there's no need for her to work for the lowest ranking herald when she's related to the contractor. Midian draws an arrow, saying she wants to test her skills, but the man with her says they can't attack a herald. She asks why it matters, as if she wins, she'll take his place so they can't lose. But it will be bad if he dies, so she'll take the tip off the arrow. The man tells her that he's still a student of the ancient Kazas, and there's always a what if in every situation. She says it doesn't matter. No matter how incredible Kazas is, a fool is still a fool, even if they train for 10 or even 100 years. Midian simply hates that the son of a traitor is a herald, and worse, he can't use magic, taking up space for competent people like herself to not become heralds. She then shoots an arrow from where she stands, flying directly into Azadin's back. Midian immediately hides behind a rock, but wonders if she hit him or not. Hit as she peeks over, only be struck directly in the forehead with a stone as Azadin jumps. He begins crouching while looking at her, asking if she was the one who shot the arrow. We see that he caught it in his quiver. Midian tells him it was a greeting, but wonders when he arrived, as she couldn't sense his presence at all. Then she realizes where he caught it, saying that this is absolutely insane. Azadin asks for their names, and Midian introduces herself, saying she's from the other lineage. Finally, we learn the guy's name, Ishmael. He says they are assistants and came to help him. Azadin asks if that's really the case and drops the arrow, saying this doesn't seem like assistance. Midian tells him that his quiver seemed empty, so she just wanted to give him arrows, claiming it would definitely be the best. She says it seems she applied to be his assistant because she was bored of staying in the Holy Land and asked them to go back home, calling them kids. Midian begins to get irritated, saying she's sure she told him she's from the other lineage, to which he responds that lineages mean nothing to heralds, and if she came to work for him, she's now his subordinate, but she shot arrows at him. Perhaps she wants to learn what happens when you do that outside of the Holy Land. She says he's so different from the rumors, asking if he's really the same person others openly mocked and bullied. Azadin tells her to apologize for being rude and that if she wants something from him, she should show respect, whether as a member of Aragasan or as his enemy, asking which one it will be. Grinding her teeth in frustration, she sets her pride aside for a moment, saying she's sorry for her rudeness and lowers her head. Azadin says he accepts her apology, but that she should never shoot anyone with her arrows again, unless she intends to kill them, as weapons are not toys outside of the Holy Land. She says yes, and as Azadin turns away, he tells them he won't say anything bad about them, so they can return to the Holy Land since he doesn't need assistance. Then he realizes he could use this opportunity and asks them if they have any water. It turns out she had set aside her pride for so long while shouting for a duel. Ishmael tries to stop her, telling her that he is truly very dangerous. She says he might be a bit different from the rumors, as he is truly strong and smart, but he would be a big coward if he didn't challenge him just because he's strong. She then formally sends a challenge for his position as a herald while watching him from above. Ishmael begins to cry, saying that now she has done it. Azadin says it's pretty crazy to hear this, and that Ariel was a bad influence on these kids. He states that if she wins, she'll take his position, but wonders if she has any idea what will happen if he wins. Finally, she responds that of course, everything that is hers, including her life, will be his, and that she is prepared. Azadin says that although Ariel is a problem, a bigger problem is her underestimating him. He warns Midian to give up before it's too late, as Ariel is the only one who defeat a herald. Azadin is aware of his bad reputation, but claims he didn't receive this position for nothing. Midian then turns and starts walking away. Ishmael wonders what she's doing. After a while, she says that they are now 100 paces away and challenges him once more. The Outland says that the duel is valid and that Azadin must accept the challenge. Both are surprised to hear the voice of the Emperor. Azadin asks if it's serious. Ishmael is terrified and explains that the voice of the Emperor is the spirit sent to every herald. Now the voice of the Emperor is a witness. Refusing the challenge is impossible, and this is not good. Midian tells him to stop worrying, as she just needs to win. After some time, we see them providing water, and Azadin begins drinking it all while they get really dirty. Ishmael, a bit concerned, wonders what's going on with the situation. He says he used a proper archery technique for the battlefield, sacrificing accuracy for the speed of the projectile. This was definitely an extreme form of the Aragasa technique, as he threw a number of stones at Midian. She reacted properly, raising a magical barrier to deflect the stones, but that wasn't enough, as he had more stones prepared. They curve like snakes, as he demonstrated earlier. His skill with the bow was impressive. Midian did her best, blocking what she could. We see one of the stones graze her head, almost knocking her down. Ishmael says he thought he couldn't use magic, but Azadin used the beauty of nature and yellow heron, asking how he's sitting there just swallowing it all. Ishmael tells him not to mention it, as it gets worse, seeing that Midian is out of breath. A surprise attack comes from the sky, which she avoids but rushes forward, saying that now she knows where his position is. She looks at a stone, and sure enough, Azadin steps out from behind it. Midian says that her prediction was perfect, and now she's got him, swinging the blade forward, cutting him in half. It's nothing but some of his miss as we see his form dissipated. Midian is confused as Ishmael yells at her to turn around. She does so, raising another magic circle, but when Azadin pushes her hand and grabs her, pulling back his fist, he says that it's over now. We see her with a worried expression as she is sent flying into the nearby rock. Ishmael seems irritated and starts yelling her name, saying he can't believe that someone from the bloodline of a traitor just hit a son of the noble lineage. He runs to her, saying that this is unforgettable, asking how someone inferior like him could do this. But the owl speaks, saying that with this, the duel is over. The owl says that Midian challenged his position and her fate is now in his hands. Ishmael, due to his interference in the duel, must also become the property of the herald, along with Midian. With an expression full of rage and humiliation, she reaches for her waist, grabs a dagger, and immediately tries to stab herself in the throat, but Azadin throws a stone, knocking the dagger from her hands. After the dagger hits the ground, he says he knew she would try something foolish. She falls to her knees, feeling desperate. Azadin says that she doesn't even have the right to die now that she's lost the duel. She can only die when he dies or when he wants her to do so, asking if she really challenged him to a duel without knowing something like this. Of course she says yes, which only makes her look irritating, as she is now a loser. Azadin, to himself, says that she is certainly an interesting child. At least he throws the water sack back to Ishmael, saying that he assumes this was enough to teach them a lesson, and that he will now release both of of them. They look confused, asking if he's serious. He responds that he just wants to pretend the duel never happened, as it would be bad for them if it was recorded. Both sit there realizing he's right, but saying nothing. Then, Azadin leaves, making his way back across the desert. But, of course, they are still following him. He says that he already told them he doesn't need slaves, and that he gave them their freedom so they could go back to the Holy Land. Midian says that he just got a young, beautiful, and talented girl as his slave, but will still let her go, asking if he's crazy. Ishmael shudders, saying that this is serious secondhand embarrassment. Azadin says that he doesn't know about the beautiful part, but if she were as talented as Ariel, she never would have lost. There are many guys who like younger girls, as there are many cultures with early marriage customs. Although he's not one of them, it would be better to think before challenging someone to a duel next time. It would be better if she never challenged anyone to a duel again. And if anyone wants to fight, she should just kill him. Ishmael says that he talks much more than expected, but it doesn't seem like he's saying all of this with genuine concern. He then turns around, noticing Midian trembling, and we see her blushing, saying that this is new. Ishmael just wonders what the hell is going on. Now we learn about the service contract. The Emperor and the Aragasa clan, where each provides the other with what they need, and any traitor will meet a horrible death. This contract used to be a symbol of loyalty and a mark of honor, but after the Emperor's death, it became a terrible curse, as we already know. Even after his death, they are still forced to honor this contract. What seemed like an endless cycle of servitude for this clan finally began to show signs of breaking when the Herald clan intervened in the Terrasser Kingdom's succession war. The Aragasa ensured victory in the succession war and obtained a copy of the Book of the Divine King. However, a notorious traitor stole the book and fled, and his name was Acre. We see some men shouting at him from atop a cliff, telling him he must return what he stole or else they will curse him. He needs to deliver his copy of the book or else they will torture him. They threatened Acre with everything they could imagine. Their hopes shattered and disappeared when Acre scattered the book in the heart of the World Mountain Range. Thus, Acre became the first person to die from the curse of the contract due to the curse. Because of his curse, he birthed twins in a male body. Now the question remains, how was this possible? These twins were Azadin and Ariel. Ironically, Ariel became the strongest herald in the clan's history, while Azadin was considered a fool. Midian just wonders who spread such a stupid rumor, as he is nothing like they say. Azadin then tells them that he already said he has no intention of taking them, so he asks them to stop following him. Midian says they aren't following him, they just have something to deliver. It's a letter from the regional chief of Salazma. She then says they don't like him very much, asking what it could be. He decides to ignore half of it, as it's just insults, but mentions that copies of the book have been appearing recently, and that he needs to retrieve them, which will be reflected in his performance evaluation. And judging by what's written there, the other heralds must be aware of this copy. Azadin wonders if this is true and asks them if they were aware of the copies of the book, to which both respond yes. Midian says that she knows her father betrayed the clan, and before she can finish the sentence, Ishmael screams and kicks her in the leg with a shut up. She asks why and simply stares at him. She says she really doesn't care about this, just confirming that he didn't know this. For now, he will have to go to Salazma to find the regional chief and thanks them for delivering the letter. Midian says they're going to the same destination, so they can just follow him and tell him what's been happening in the clan too. He replies that he doesn't own the road, so they're free to do whatever they want. As they walk, she quickly runs ahead, happy, while Ishmael sighs in relief. Sometime later, they finally arrive at the edge of the desert and are about to enter a grassland area. Now they also have mounts. While Azadin sleeps, he wakes up and stretches, telling the other two to get up as well. They continue walking with their new mounts, and he tells them to just spring ahead. Both are still sleepy, but we see water for the first time in a long while, and they begin to fill their canteens. And when Azadin puts down that giant bag, someone shouts at them, asking who gave them permission to take water from his spring. He himself says that he has no intention of fighting, asking what they want. The man says he wants all of them, smiling maliciously. Azadin just wants to confirm, asking if there's no room for negotiations. However, the man responds that he certainly talks too much for an adult man and asks what's wrong with a mask, if he's a clown. The leader then tells his men to go capture the girl and kill the other two. Of course, they exit the scene, and judging by their poses, it seems like they were knocked out. The others begin bowing and apologizing, saying they are innocent people. Ishmael says he thought they were bandits. They explain that they were just recently called up as the children of Marcus Kazel are recruiting people to find a book. Everyone wonders how they should find something like that and therefore wander aimlessly due to sheer bad luck. The guy corrects himself, saying it's a great stroke of luck to meet someone as noble as they are. Midian asks if they could just be thieves making up excuses. Azadin says he doubts that, as this isn't a road where merchants and travelers usually pass. Midian adds that, in that case, they will have to kill them quietly. But Azadin says he doesn't kill without a reason. She's surprised, and Ishmael comments that it's fair to kill them even if they are really good people. There's a chance that could be exposed if they leave them alive. However, the other man says that doesn't mean he should kill them for his own comfort, and that all people deserve a second chance. One of the would-be bandits begins to say that he's right and that people's lives are important, expressing that he expected this from someone so noble. The leader begins laughing, saying he's the best and guaranteeing that great fortune will fall upon him and his family for his mercy. The masked man then tells him to shut up. Ishmael thinks about how he often sees people who refuse to kill, but he didn't expect to see someone from the Herald clan act like this. Azadin strikes the man directly in the face just like he did with the others, and we see the guys explode. He comments that it was a good hit and that he could feel the guys being crushed. He then warns them not to move too much, as one wrong move could cause not only their eyes to explode but probably their brains too. They say he promised to let them live, but Azadin responds that that's their life. Although he has inflicted permanent damage so they can't harm others, he will ensure they won't regret it immediately. They wonder what the hell they just heard, but Midian and Ishmael just stand there, saying it's not that bad. As they all watch, sometime later the guy starts running and ends up crushing 3 of his nuts and blinding the others. One of the victims of the Nutcracker says that if he ever finds him again, he'll make sure he pays for it. But we see a giant thick hand reaching forward, placing its palm on the guy's head, only to be ripped off by a giant creature resembling a troll. They turn around horrified as the guy is lifted into the air, and the troll says he found food for himself. He starts throwing them into his giant basket, saying that today has been a really good hunt. Then he grabs another, saying that he won't escape, and throws him into his basket as well. The goblins begin eating the guy whose head was exploded, as he also had to feed his friends. Soon, they spot a village on the horizon, and the ogre trolls begin to smile, saying that at the fortress there will be plenty of food. We return as they continue riding their mounts. Midian says that at first she thought he was just going slowly, so she was surprised, but she thinks it wasn't a bad tactic, as they even recovered all their weapons. Azadin says it's hard for someone to understand others without having been in the same position, and that losing an eye has greater consequences than one might imagine. The people who would have been victimized by their incursions are not people who fear, and he's sure it's a good opportunity for them to regret. Ishmael is surprised that he gave them the chance to repent. It's funny that a herald is giving another person a chance to purify their soul. They begin to dismount, and Azadin says that the conversation is bothering him. Midian asks what he means. He says that rumors say that Marquis Kazel is looking for a copy of the Book of the Divine King. Ishmael comments that Kazel lost the succession fight, asking if he thinks Kazel is trying to rise in the hierarchy by using the book. Azadin says that seems pretty dangerous, so he'll have to take off his mask, as it shows he's a herald, and they'll need to be cautious until they leave Kazel's territory. We see the faces of both of them, completely surprised, realizing that our friend Azadin doesn't even have eyes, as all we see is a scar on his face. Both stand there and mouths agape, while he puts on a cloak to further disguise himself. Ishmael says that he doesn't seem to have any difficulty, even though he can't see, asking how that's possible. Azadin responds that he doesn't know either. Since he was born, he has been able to see without eyes. Midian runs up to him and he wonders what she wants, telling her to speak her mind. She says that she just thinks he probably looks better with the scar. He asks what she means, and she responds that he was probably very handsome and then had an accident where he lost his eyes. She thinks it's better to have scars like this than a handsome face with ugly eyes. Ishmael says she's being very rude, but Azadin comments that she's saying the same thing as the one who caused the wound on his face. She is surprised and asks who did it, and he says it was none other than Arail. We see his face bleeding. Azadin explains that she found it strange that he didn't have what should have been there, and that she at least can imagine there used to be eyes where there should have been. But when it healed, she cut his face, saying it would be better this way. Because of that, he can pretend to be blind and didn't face any problems when he was alone. Midian says that this just means they need to pretend he's blind too. He responds that it's fine as they continue walking toward the same fortress the ogre creature had seen as well. That night, they finally arrive, and the guards are inspecting the front. Ishmael says he can see the gates, but the line seems pretty long. Azadin comments that it's been a while since he was here at the East Village Gate. Midian says it's also the village where the Imperial Road begins, and it's a good starting point for their journey, telling her to be quiet as he is on a pilgrimage, one only, and they are just a few kids who happen to join him. Then he notices something and calls Ishmael a puppy, asking if it was like this when he was last here. Because the guards are doing a very thorough inspection, even stealing some things and putting them in their pockets. Midian says they're just stealing, and Ishmael responds that it wasn't this bad when he was here last time. Azadin says now he sees they're looking for something, and if they're paying close attention, he might have an idea. One of the men in line asks if he can't see, and Azadin says no. It's just that these two are on a pilgrimage with him. The guy responds that it must be really hard, and Azadin asks what is going on. The guy asks if he hasn't heard the rumors that there are copies of the Book of the Divine King circulating. The rumors say that some member of the Herald clan made copies of the book after stealing it, and these copies are appearing everywhere. All the bastards of Kazel are hunting the book now, and it's a complete mess. Azadin says this means there is more than just that loser he met. The guy asks what he means, but Azadin replies that it was nothing. This isn't good, as he has one of the book's pages, so it will be annoying to deal with. The man being robbed says that he needs the money to feed his family, mentioning they're looking for the Book of the Divine King and asking why they're taking his money. The guard punches him in the face, telling him to let go, causing the man to fall to the ground. He then says that a grimoire can take many forms and appearances, and who knows if his grimoire is in the form of money. They'll inspect him closely and return it if it's not the book they're looking for. The man's daughter then steps forward, saying that this is theft and asking them to give it back. They begin insulting her, asking if she's really answering them. If she is, it means she needs a beating. Her father hugs her, saying they're threatening a child with violence. They all tell him to shut up, hitting him in the stomach. She starts comforting her father, and the guard says he should educate his daughter better. Then they ask the next people to step forward. We see Midian very angry. Ishmael asks what they should do, and Midian wonders if they should fight, but Azadin says to wait. A man then runs, whispering something to the guard, which scares him. Azadin realizes that this is not a good thing, as everyone starts panicking, grabbing what they can and running inside. Everyone else wonders what's going on. Then, even blind, he tells them that an ogre has been spotted nearby. Curious, they ask what he means, and Azadin explains that he has very good hearing and has heard about the ogre. That's why they ended up closing the gates. We see them all looking worried. Everyone starts banging on the door, saying they can talk about it and asking to be let in. Next, we see a carriage as a man approaches it. We are introduced to another of Kazel's bastard sons named Jarkiv. He asks if they closed the gates, and they confirm that they did. Jarkiv says that since they confirm there are no copies of the book there, they should just leave with what they took. A man runs up to Jarkiv, asking what he should do now. Jarkiv tells him that they need to repel the ogre and any other monsters approaching the gate, as they've been trained enough to handle them. The man worries as they were only trained for a day, and Jarkiv says that at least they should let the people outside in, and he'll command the defense from there. Jarkiv states that he's not even a knight, asking what he's capable of. The man doesn't want to hear this from a knight who's running away, but Jarkiv says he'll leave it to him, and that this is good enough while they ride. The man watches and gets nervous as he can feel the ground shaking. Nearby birds also start fleeing, showing that something is approaching. We now see one of the aspiring bandits in the basket, asking if they're going to be eaten, and where they were going. The trolls march toward the village while high above, a man watches the trail of calamity approaching. His only reaction is to look shocked, not knowing what will happen to everyone present at that location. Not only him, but everyone around Azadin watch the massive destruction approaching. Not far away, we discover that the people decided to leave. They hold torches while walking down the trail of tears. A woman turns around with a lantern and tells Azadin that the path will become more difficult from here on. She hands Ishmael a lantern, asking him to guide his younger sister and uncle. Since she had an extra lantern, she believes it will help him. He thanks her, saying he will take care of his uncle, so she doesn't need to worry. Midian laughs while patting Azadin's back, commenting that it seems people act kinder when he pretends to be blind. Back at the gates before they leave, we see the man who had been talking to Jarkiv saying that the knights and mercenaries have fled. However, he reminds everyone that they need to protect the village. He asks those who can fight to stay and help, and mentions that it's also valid just to provide support. This way, while defending the village, the others can escape more quickly. The man who was previously beaten tells his daughter, Cosette, that he will fight to protect her. She questions him, saying he can barely cut an apple. Azadin reflects on the people who decided to stay and fight. Midian comments that it's unbelievable that knights whose purpose is to serve the people are abandoning everyone. To her, it's disgraceful and pathetic. Knowing something, Azadin says that, although they are from Wybris, it seems that instead of protecting others, they'd find it noble to stay and fight. Midian agrees, although she comments that it would be strange for an Aragasa to sympathize with the people of Wybris. Azadin says that he feels the same way. Then, he warns that it's time for them to separate. With his ghostly aura beginning to show, he disappears, leaving only his staff behind. They shout, asking where he went. Back at the fortress, we see everyone on guard. Cosette's father tells the captain that there are too many enemies. We find out that, in addition to goblins, there are orcs accompanying the ogre. The ogre roars, revealing that his name is Goldo. He throws his basket full of people on the ground and says it serves as a storage of meat, sustaining his food for a long time. He suggests that investing in his food market would be a good idea. Although his words are simple, like human village, big strong. Goldo lifts his foot and slams it on the ground, declaring that he will take as many as he can. The captain points out that the ogre is the leader and orders everyone to fire arrows at him. As the bows are fired, most of the arrows don't reach the castle. However, some of them hit Goldo. A small goblin with a staff smiles behind the basket and tells Goldo to take the chance and break the gate. The entire army begins to advance. The captain shouts that they need to take care of the enemies charging. The arrows continue to fly, but the goblins use their shields to protect themselves. One of the goblins raises his axe and starts hitting the gate. Goldo grabs a large rock nearby, runs, and throws it at the wall, causing damage even to his own army. The people on the other side of the gate do their best to keep it standing. The captain begins to panic, shouting that they need to attack them. Cosette's father raises his bow in the air, prepared to act, hoping that his daughter has moved far enough away so that when they inevitably die, she will still be safe. We still see the small shaman behind the basket, preparing another spell as the fire shines in his staff. He realizes it is the right moment and casts the spell directly into the sky, saying that the wand responded and that the Book of the Divine King is present doesn't, as this is the only reason it was activated. The shaman is stomped on the face, falling to the ground. Azadin uses the basket to fly up high above Goldo, who is already preparing another rock. Goldo throws it directly toward Cosette's father and another villager, and we see the explosion happen. However, Azadin manages to get them out of the danger's way in time. He releases them, and the captain is surprised to see someone coming to help them. Azadin says that he will help them defend the gate, but the captain wants to know who he is. He then replies that he's just a messenger from the Emperor passing through. They start to feel terrified, asking if he means a member of the Herald clan. Before they can get an answer, he's already ready with his bow. Still fighting, he leaps off the castle wall and shoots 2 quick arrows directly into Goldo's eyes, blinding him as he screams in pain. Goldo starts slamming the ground, saying he will kill him, and ends up killing his own allies. The man lands on his head while Goldo continues swinging his arms blindly. He also steps forward, crushing the goblins beneath him. Azadin comments that this is exactly what he expected. He is pleased that the creature is so stupid, so he pulls more arrows and shoots, killing some goblins. The captain wonders if he is really a sanctity killer, and why he would be helping unless he had been hired. The basket falls, and when Azadin looks at it, he sees that one of the amateur bandits from earlier is still alive. The man crawls out, tears in his eyes, completely terrified. What he sees in front of him is the shaman, who everyone thought was dead, slowly transforming. He talks about the book of the Divine King while drooling, and his arm begins to grow in a grotesque and deformed way. The shaman declares that he will be the king of the claws and transforms into a kind of monster with tentacles and terrifying teeth. He keeps chanting that he will be the king of the claws as he seems ready to devour someone. Then he is decapitated, and we see only parts of the tentacled monster on the ground. Azadin comments that this is going to be a problem as the monster begins to expand and fire. We see that one of the monster's tentacles begins to lash forward toward Goldo, and then he realizes it too. So he jumps off its head, leaving only Goldo to be eaten as the monster begins to tear him apart. Goldo screams, saying it hurts, while trying his best to crawl away. He says that he likes to eat, but doesn't like being eaten, as we watch the monster swallow Goldo completely, like a snake. Azadin lands on the ground, watching the monster as it begins to slowly transform into a different shape. It keeps transforming into something else. All the villagers seem terrified, and Azadin recognizes it as Godkin Kurt, the king of the claws. The monster appears swollen, and the shaman from before emerges from it, holding his staff. He starts laughing and smiling as the staff lights up once again, firing a beam and guiding it to the page. Out of nowhere, he shoots at Azadin, and he wonders if he's going after the page. The shaman says that the servants of Yagus must deliver the book to him, and if they do, he will kill them quickly, without pain. Before he can finish his sentence, an arrow flies through him, nearly finishing the job. We see that Azadin didn't even give him the chance to deliver a monologue. Kurt starts getting irritated with this, and when Azadin turns around, he realizes that he has no more arrows but knows he is going after the page. Kurt then attacks Azadin with one of his tentacles, which Azadin dodges, asking why they are looking for copies of the Book of the Divine King anyway. He continues dodging his attacks, but of course the allies aren't safe either, as they are being hit by crossfire. One of them even gets showered with purple liquid, which begins to burn him. Kurt yells, calling him insolent, as he lashes out with even more tentacles while Azadin runs from him. He realizes where he's running. It's a sword, and it blocks his path. Azadin grabs the sword, realizing he needs to fight. He turns around, raising the sword to fight against the tentacles. Of course, he's not just skilled with a bow and arrow, as he demonstrated earlier, but also very good with the sword, as he begins sending the creature's claws flying through the air, one after the other, advancing. He says that these fangs are too big for its body as they fall to the ground. He continues, saying that fangs with superficial roots are weak. Kurt tells him to shut up, reminding him that he is the king of the claws after all, sending even more, thinking that quantity is better than quality. The sword is then corroded by that purple liquid and throws it away, saying he knew it wouldn't last long. Kurt takes this chance to attack with even more force, seeing that Azadin no longer has a weapon. Azadin says that secretly, he's working at a loss by doing this without even receiving gold coins. The villagers decide it's finally time to help him, and we see them launching a barrage of arrows forward. This begins pushing Kyoraid backward, away from Azadin, giving him time. The captain says they have to help the Herald, no matter what happens. They still say that helping the Herald clan seems a little strange, and if the Church of the King hears about it, they will be accused and executed. He says they were abandoned by these same people, asking why they should fear their punishment when they abandoned them. They end up realizing he's right, and Cosette's father pulls out his bow, saying he doesn't want to die here as he launches the first arrow. He prepares another, saying they're just attacking monsters, and after killing it, they can go after the Herald clan member or whatever comes next. Everyone starts agreeing with him, saying that this is the perfect plan, and that's why they decided to help him in the first place. While Kyoraid is being bombarded with arrows, Azadin says they should have given him the arrows from the start. He stretches, saying he thinks it's time to start. He picks up one of the fangs from the ground and throws it forward, making it explode where it lands. He begins to laugh, saying that should be enough. He picks up another and starts firing them quickly, one after the other. It turns out this was what he was planning when he cut the fangs earlier. Kurt starts getting angry, asking how dare he. Azadin asks why he's so mad, saying that he's just returning his fangs. Carrot screams, saying he's going to become an even bigger being than he is now. When Azadin picks up a giant one and throws it forwards, saying that Kira truly understands that he is a sanctity exterminator, we see the arrow pierce directly through Carrot's skull. It's brutal. He then picks up another, saying that his job is to eliminate things like this as he throws it, cutting Kira's head off, which bounces on the ground. We see that in his last moments, he was pure rage. The monster then begins to disintegrate, falling apart into pieces. Azadin says that with this, it's over, and he goes to grab the staff, but hears the captain shouting, calling him a soulless pagan. When he turns around, everyone is pointing their arrows at him. Azadin says that this is pretty rude and that they might make a mistake if they shoot. The captain asks what he's planning and why he helped them with the monsters. The villagers start saying that he probably brought them here. They say that, no matter how they think about it, it's strange that they only appear when he also shows up and that everything is his fault from the very beginning. Azadin thinks about how to respond to this stupid situation. He stands there while they continue to criticize him, saying that he must be the reason they are there. But of course, he doesn't know why the monster showed up either. As everyone knows, he just did his duties according to the gold coins, and someone used one to make a request to them. They are surprised, asking who wished for the demon of the gold coin. They start to panic, asking who it could be, saying they know they are fighting, but wishing for the Herald clan is too much. One of the men asks if this person is present right now, and he replies that he's not obligated to tell them that, nor does he have the authority to do so. Everyone starts to panic, and he asks if he can leave now or if they're going to fight him for the Church of the King, even though they were attacked by the noble bastard clan and abandoned. One of the citizens tells him to stop speaking ill of their faith, and Azadin laughs, saying that of course they are faithful citizens as he walks away. We see the aspiring bandit still alive, asking if it's finally over. He looks up only to see Azadin and is terrified that he survived. Azadin tells him to be nice, as he was given a second chance at life. He starts crying. I really hope he gets good character development. That said, he leaves and jumps off the ground, running toward the castle wall as they point their bows at him. The captain shouts, telling them not to attack. Azadin appears, grabbing a handful of arrows from his large quiver. He says he'll just take a few, asking if that's okay. The captain thanks him, and Azadin calls him a fool, saying that if the right person had known him, he definitely would have been executed. But we see him smiling back on the trail where everyone was walking. The scene is empty as Azadin runs through the forest with the owl right behind him. The owl asks why he lied to them, and he replies that if he had told the truth, they would have lived in fear for getting involved with him. The owl asks if he doesn't resent them as they treated him strangely even after he saved them. He says that humans are weak, but that anyway, they were kind to him when he pretended to be blind, so they deserve praise. However, he's quite tired because he had to run all the way there, and to make matters worse, he did it without receiving a single gold coin. Then he sees something ahead and realizes that it's none other than Midian and Ishmael. Taking advantage of the moment, he mentions that he also hunted a godkin Kurt. They comment that killing a Kurid seems intense, but he responds that, in fact, it wasn't that strong. Ishmael starts reflecting on the situation, saying that he wasted his energy but didn't even get paid for it. Azadin says that Midian told him it's a beautiful thing to help and protect people, and that life isn't fun without the right perspective. Midian laughs, saying that Ishmael was never a fun person and wonders why he's getting beat up. Azadin says that by saying they're alone, he means the other Evacues left them behind. She explains that they tried to stop them at first, but they said they would come back to help them fight against the weak monsters. They even gave them a torch so they wouldn't get lost in the dark, which was kind of them, but they only did it because they didn't know she was Aragasa. Midian starts saying it was only because she's pretty, and Azadin laughs, saying that surely it was because she was a child, not because they thought she was pretty. She says she's 13 years old and mentions a queen in the north who is already married at that age. Azadin then asks if they recognize the staff as he shows it. Midian says it looks like a magic wand. Knowing this, he then reveals that it was what Kurt had. She says she'll have to concentrate hard for that, but at the moment, she doesn't have enough energy. Then she realizes something and asks if he's recognizing her as a subordinate. He replies that she can certainly ask a relative for a favor. Midian says she also wants him to do a favor for her, and he responds that yes, he can inspect her tomorrow. He then jumps off the ground and onto a tree, while she asks where he's going. Azadin says he needs to hurry and that she should follow him. She asks why they're in a hurry, and we see the Evacues again. The woman who was kind to them before sees him and asks when he arrives, saying that the children were looking for him. He says he got a bit lost, but that they're smart kids, so they'll catch up with him soon. More importantly, he heard victory cries from the village. The aunt asks what he means, and he replies that, as they know, he has very good hearing, and that it'll probably be fine if they return to the village for now. He asks if she can signal him from here with something like lantern signals. The aunt thinks about it, and then one of the Evacues shouts, saying that they see something. It's lanterns near the gate, now lit, and the watch committee must have really succeeded. Everyone starts to get happy, and Azadin tells her to send a small group of people to check. When she turns to thank him, she realizes he's completely disappeared, wondering where he went. Of course, he just wanted to help them so they wouldn't be separated from their loved ones. However, he was too lazy for that, and if he lay down, he'd definitely pass out. Then he sees smoke on the mountains and wonders what it is. He decides to go check and soon stops, observing a campfire with soldiers. They are the guys who fled the city. They say that a drought and the presence of an ogre are crazy things to happen again in this territory and that place is finished. They just need to do a big job and get out of there. Azadin realizes that the bastard's son must also be there, inside the only tent with lights on. He sees some valuable items in the boxes and says that he's out of money. The owl responds that he hit the lottery, as it's also ready for him to take all of it. Azadin comments that traveling requires a lot of money, and that this is truly a blessing. Suddenly, they hear Jarkiv shouting, asking if they are playing with him, since his loot has been stolen. Jarkiv says that this is the only reason he hired them. They explain that they were ambushed and didn't even have time to react. The Lord calls one of the men, telling him to say something as it's his responsibility. We see the man eating an apple and saying that if he says yes, then it must definitely be his fault. Jarkiv responds that he will cut the salaries of these two, asking if they have any objections. The man replies that he should do whatever he wants. However, one of his belongings also disappeared, which means it's not just a simple thief. Jarkiv asks what was lost, but the man says he won't tell him, even though it's probably nothing important, and therefore doesn't matter. The man then says that the little thief will probably move on to the next village and suggests that a recruitment order be issued in that village with the Lord's authority. Jarkiv comments that the nearest village is a public station and is run by a noble, so it would be difficult to do that. He asks the man why he's giving him orders, reminding him that he's the boss there. The man smiles and replies that it's fine, he'll just raid that place in his name before stabbing Jarkiv in the stomach with a knife. Jarkiv looks down terrified, asking why he would do such a thing. Even his men are confused, asking what went wrong. We see the man's eyes glowing green as he tells them not to worry, since that dagger was a gift from a witch and soon begins to release a purple aura. The dagger transforms into a spider and penetrates Jarkiv's skin. Jarkiv begins to panic. I'd be terrified too. The captain tells him he should be fine for now, and Jarkiv screams, asking what the man did to him. The man then whistles while Jarkiv begins to feel a stabbing pain and falls to the ground. The man tells him to relax, claiming that the spider inside him just gave a little bite, and that he only needs to listen carefully or the spider will start laying eggs inside him. When the eggs hatch, it will surely be quite a sight. Jarkiv asks what the hell the man wants from him, and even the other soldiers seem concerned about what to do. The captain puts his arm around his shoulder and says that he will raid the public station and capture the little rat who stole his precious item. Jarkiv looks absolutely horrified and jumps to another spot. Meanwhile, we see Ishmael and Midian sleeping on their mount. The owl tells them to get their butts up, and we see everyone doing exactly that, listening to it. Midian notices something and calls Azadin, asking why he now has two wands. He replies that when he looted the mercenary supplies yesterday, he found the same one and it looks almost identical to the one the goblin shaman was using. Azadin tells her to take a look. Ishmael grabs the wand and says he will examine it, as it might be cursed. He begins infusing his mana into it, checking the properties of the wand, and Azadin asks what he sees. Ishmael replies that he sees a mental image of green and black. Azadin comments that if it were the king of the Fang, he should be seeing red mana, asking if it belongs to a different Kurt. Ishmael confirms that it does, explaining that the purpose of the wand is to locate a specific target. He says it's made to point at something is not durable, so it will break easily. However, its creator was definitely very skilled, as despite seeming to have been created in a hurry, its performance far exceeds that of most magical tools. Azadin states that it's a wand created to track the pages of the Divine King's book. Since there's more than one of these, that means he will have to deal with even more trackers for now. He decides to go take a look at the items he just stole. We see Azadin observing the mercenary camp from a tree branch. He comments that the atmosphere has changed drastically since last night, as they are preparing for a battle. His purpose must also be to collect the copy, what the goblin shaman expected them to do after losing the wand, but their retaliation wasn't what he expected. Ishmael and Midian appear and ask Azadin what he saw. He replies that they are planning to attack the next village. Midian observes that it's a public stage station, though Ishmael says the scale of the attack is much bigger than that of a common village. Midian says they can't act recklessly, and that they must have a reason for becoming so desperate. Azadin agrees while we see him putting his disguise on again. He begins walking forward, taking off the mask and holding the wand and the page close to his chest as they head toward the next village. They weren't lying, the village is absolutely packed with people, but the guards aren't doing thorough inspections like the others. One of the guards tells Azadin to be careful as he is blind, and Azadin thanks him. Midian says that she's happy they let blind pilgrims in for free while they walk through the market. Ishmael and Midian seem very happy. Ishmael gets excited, saying that he saw a cart from the Coruscant Vendor Association. Midian says that means they can take a break while looking ahead to the association. Azadin thinks about it, asking if it will be such a good idea as they start walking. Soon we see a flashback of a child talking to Ariel, asking if she is really the youngest herald. The child reminds her that she is still the daughter of a traitor, so she shouldn't be so full of herself. The man explains that the greatest genius of the clan, who became a herald at the age of 3, was how adults referred to Ariel back then. And in his youth, he had to learn the truth of that through a broken ankle. However, that wasn't all, because Ariel was much more than just what the rumors said about her. He found her very beautiful and couldn't take his eyes off her. The man then opens his eyes eyes, wondering what she is doing now. Then he hears a sound from outside and wonders what it is. We go back a few hours earlier when Azadin and the others arrived in the city. They arrive at the Coruscant Merchants Association. The association started as a small network of traders but has grown and is now a large organization. In fact, it is one of the ghost organizations managed by Herald clan, meaning the Aragasa people. Therefore, all the merchants in the association are children of Aragasanos. We see them looking away from Azadin, who of course is not welcome, as his father is considered a traitor. Azadin says it would be nice if everyone kept quiet today. Midian and Ishmael can hardly wait to take a bath. Then we hear some people shouting at him, asking if he is really the Lord Heralds of the 1008 spirits. They ask if the last 3 months of pretending to be a herald have served him well. He doesn't answer, and they continue mocking him, laughing at the fact that he's a servant, saying that despite that, he certainly has talent. Azadin responds that those kids are not his servants, and that he needs help changing the horseshoes. They agree, saying they can help him, but in a very sarcastic manner. Still, he hands them a bag and asks them to exchange it for money, also asking if they can get some Blue River arrowheads if they're in stock. The man stands right in front of Azadin, saying that he only became a herald thanks to Elder Kasa's recommendation, even with the formal procedures. It doesn't help that he lagged behind in basic training. They continue mocking him, saying that he must have stolen the items from his bag. Azadin asks to change his clothes, wondering if he can borrow some pieces and if they can wash the ones he is wearing. Ishmael whispers to Midian, saying that he knew this would happen, but this is really bad. She responds that regardless of his birth circumstances, he is still a herald and that helping him is their duty. In the middle of this, they throw a dress at him, saying that this is the change of clothes. When he looks down, he asks if they can stop being childish, as he doesn't exactly want to hit them. They ask what the hell he's barking about, questioning if he thinks they're acting like servants just because he's so great. They say that he never would have managed to be one of the 108 spirits if it weren't for luck. Midian says that if they're so frustrated, why don't they settle it with a duel, or are they afraid of the risk involved? She says they're only good at talking. Azadin thinks it shouldn't be her talking about the risk of duels since she's the one who lost 2 of them. The man approaches her, saying that she's only saying this because she knows nothing about Azadin, since he didn't even take a single punch. She asks if that's really the case and jumps from the ground into the air, landing on the man's back while holding a knife to his throat. He asks what she's doing, calling her miss. Midian says he certainly doesn't understand the situation he's in. She explains that she is of Ether descent, and that, as a mere servant, he dares to make such sarcastic comments. She says that if he doesn't like Azadin, then he should step forward and prove himself through actions, not words. She states that it's a joke to think that Azadin couldn't take a punch, asking if he really is underestimating the heralds this much. Before anyone can approach, Ishmael seems nervous. Midian is still angry. We see the man from earlier saying that things have gotten pretty tense and then asks Azadin if it's been a while. Azadin confirms, and the man asks Midian's name. She answers, saying that her name is Midian of Aether. He introduces himself as Derek of Seven and apologizes on behalf of his companion, asking if she could stop as he doesn't want their clans spilling blood. She pulls the blade away from his throat and jumps back. The man comments that she definitely has spilled blood as we see a bit of her neck. His friend tells him to just spit out his pride. Derek calls out to them, and then we find out that their names are Pedo and Kosarak. He tells them to focus on their duties at the association while Derek passes by Azadin. Derek then tells Azadin to wash up and come, as he wants to have dinner together. Azadin wonders why he's bothering, but ends up accepting. That night, Azadin is back in his room after taking the bath, saying that he feels refreshed after soaking for a while. We see scars all over his body. Ishmael calls him, asking why he's standing still, explaining that although his birth circumstances are tough, Arail, who shares his blood, is revered. He heard that those who challenge her and make comments about her are immediately punished. Azadin responds that she has her own way of doing things. He then says that because of this, he should hurry and convince Midian to move on. Otherwise, they'll end up like him. That night, he goes to Derek's tent. Derek has dinner prepared. We see a question that surprises Azadin so much that the food falls from his spoon. The fellow asks if he's ever heard of Arail. Azadin replies no and wonders why he's still asking about her. Derek says that he's worried about his older sister. Azadin then responds that, considering her abilities, she's not someone to worry about. He also says that this is unbelievable, as the first thing Azadin did upon arrival was attack members of the association while reaching for apples. Derek grabs the apples and removes them, saying that Azadin should start talking about his work already. Azadin responds that he is doing his job properly and collecting gold coins. Derek then asks about the attacks on other merchant associations, questioning what happened to the idea of keeping them under control. Azadin says he should look at it, asking if he's seen something like this, as it's none other than the staff he obtained. Derek confirms yes and explains that Bishop Kurt Godkin uses this tool to search for the copy of the Book of the Divine. Divine King, and that's why Midian is here, as she was delivering a letter from the district leader. Azadin says that he's surprised that everyone knows about this. Derek replies that he's the only one who doesn't know because he hasn't been making his reports. Ringing the Swan was a good contribution, but it would have been better if he brought something related to the Divine King's copy. He confirms with a gesture and at the same time grabs an apple. Derek, completely surprised, asks what he means by that. Azadin replies that this must mean that all the other heralds came back empty-handed before he can eat the apple. Derek grabs his hand, telling him to hand over the copy immediately. Azadin is confused, wondering why he wants it. We see that even though it's night, the market is still bustling and Ishmael and Midian are outside, taking care of the horses. Then they hear Derek shouting Azadin's name, and we see that he is genuinely terrified. Azadin looks at him, and Derek asks if he is implying that he doesn't trust him. He claims that he can protect the copy much better than someone as powerless as Azadin. Frenetically, Azadin responds that it would certainly be harder for Derek. One of the bastard children of Marcus Kazel, along with his group, is heading there, and among them are heretics who follow Kurt. Derek laughs, asking if Azadin really thinks they would lose to them, and although he lost to Uriel, he had to former herald. Azadin says that this is the problem. Surely Derek thinks there would be rumors if a group of merchants fought so well. Derek responds that this isn't important, as what truly matters is protecting the copies. Besides, he is much weaker than Uriel. Azadin says he is referring to when they were all children, as Derek wasn't a match for his sister back then. Compared to what he was then, Derek has become much stronger, but Uriel is now the strongest warrior of her kind, with countless followers at her feet. And it's been years since he last saw her, so he can't even imagine how much stronger she would be now. He says he will personally deliver the copy to the regional manager, and that it would be better that way. Derek begins to get annoyed, reminding Azadin that he is a senior. One of the merchants rushes in, saying that there is a problem, something happening at the east gates. Earlier, at the east gates of the city, we see a group of soldiers waiting there. One of them is surprised to see Jarkiv and his men stopping. He says there are too many to pass, ordering them to camp somewhere else and return tomorrow. Jarkiv laughs, telling the guard Duran that he did a good job, and that he should take this as a token of gratitude for all this hard work today, handing him a bag of money. Jaren says that he is in a difficult situation, reminding him that he is also a knight. Their leader says that if anything goes wrong, both of them will end up as priests in the Church of the King, so they are in this together. Jaren then says that if he guesses correctly, yes, and he will let them in, but will soon be greeted with a sword to his skull as the captain decides to take action and cut him on the spot. When Duran's body falls to the ground, Jarkiv looks on in horror, as it is not just the captain, but the rest of his men are also killing all the guards. He tells them that he didn't want this to happen. The captain replies that he should be happy, as there wouldn't be any fun if they didn't do this. Jarkiv says that he is making it very difficult, as there are 3 gates. The captain responds that it is nothing to worry about while looking at his hand. We see the light of the forbidden flesh glow as insects start crawling out of it. The captain then blows on them, making them rise in the wind as they begin to attach to everyone in front of them. The spiders begin to crawl inside their bodies just as they did with Prince, while their bodies grotesquely grow, revealing that they are now giants. Jarkiv says that he can't believe he never realized he was a heretic. The captain smiles, saying it took him too long to realize and that they should continue working together because it's mutual help. He will get the book of the Divine King, and Jarkiv will have his revenge. The captain smiles again, asking what Jarkiv thinks of his offer. Then he whistles again, causing the spider in Jarkiv's stomach to go wild, making him fall to his knees in pain. The captain's men look down at him, and the captain says that no one is allowed to leave this village from now on. He orders them to find the rat that stole their belongings. We see a man leaving his house, looking at the gates, wondering what the problem is. He approaches and asks what is going on, being informed that some guys are stopping them from leaving the village. They begin to question why they can't leave. The guys affected by gigantification say it's because he said so. One of the villagers says that he has no right to stop them and tries to push him aside, saying that he will leave. Then the giant grabs the guy's head like a basketball, lifting him into the air, saying that he already said that no one is allowed to leave. The rest watch in horror and begin to run, and the guy says something feels wrong. His partner agrees, and they begin to salivate, saying they are hungry. Spiders begin to crawl out of the guy's hand, and we see his mouth opening, revealing a full fuel for nightmares. The villager closes his eyes in fear, only to hear a strange sound. He opens them and sees an arrow lodged in the guy's throat, causing him to lose balance and start falling. The villager turns around, wondering what's going on. Even the guy's partner looks up after hearing something, only to be impaled by Azadin, who drives his spear into his back, planting him to the ground. The villager starts to catch his breath, and we see Azadin pulling the spear from the guy's head, while noticing that spiders are crawling all over him. He says they are subordinates of the Spider Queen Art Hijare. People started running, overcome with fear from what they had just witnessed. Still standing over the monster with his spear, Azadin looked back when he heard someone calling his name. Midian asked if he had already defeated the monster. Azadin replied that this was just the beginning. Pointing behind him, he instructed them to enter the tent to grab food and water. Ishmael asked if he should do it immediately. Azadin shouted yes, because many people might starve right now. Shortly afterward, Midian made a surprised expression as behind Azadin, the monster began to rise. She screamed, telling him to look behind him. Turning quickly, Azadin realized the monster was already standing and about to attack him. Thanks to his speed, he was able to leap back. Looking ahead, he saw two zombies saying they were hungry and only wanted meat. Looking more closely, he noticed that these creatures had a terrifying appearance. Certainly, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night after witnessing something like this. Azadin commented that the monster could still move in this state because the spiders were likely controlling its nervous system. As a result, the two enemies advanced toward him. As he distanced himself, Azadin wondered what would happen if he sent shockwaves through their bodies. After another failed attempt to grab him, the monster's vision was blocked as Azadin threw a cloth over its face. Curious to test a skill he wanted to use, he decided to employ it. With his electricity, he struck the monster directly. As soon as the attack hit, several spiders began to fall. The monster collapsed to the ground with a horrific expression. However, the battle wasn't over yet, as another spider unexpectedly attacked him. Demonstrating great agility, Azadin dodged the claw coming toward him. It was evident that the monster now had several tentacles and numerous small spiders crawling all over its body. Letting out a sarcastic laugh, Azadin realized the monster had evolved considerably. Someone called his name, and when he looked up, he saw a torch falling toward him. He caught it and threw it at the monster. As a result, the intense heat began to affect it. Not wasting time, Ishmael helped Azadin by engulfing all the enemies in flames. Left with no choice, the two monsters stayed in place, consumed by the fire. Azadin, seeing the situation, praised the work done and ordered that they ensure the fire didn't reach the merchant camp. In his thoughts, he remarked that it wasn't so bad. The two who were nearby watching the scene realized that the fire was indeed working against the monsters. One of them, positioned a little further back, shouted for them to burn those bastards. Without hesitation, they followed the plan, throwing fire at the monsters. They all began to be consumed by the flames. With a torch in his hand, Azadin attacked one of the monsters, which quickly caught fire. As it fell to the ground, it was consumed by the flames while Azadin watched calmly. After noticing that the situation had calmed down, Azadin sighed with relief. He asked about the food and water, and Midian replied that they had gathered everything they could find. Ishmael asked if he should bring the goats too, and was interrupted by Midian, who celebrated, saying they had finally been truly useful. She smiled, stating that Azadin would always need them and therefore should accept them. However, Midian was interrupted by an owl arriving, calling Azadin's name. The bird perched on his shoulder and he asked if there was a new contractor. She confirmed, and Azadin, curious, asked where he was. The owl informed him that the contractor was to the west. At that moment, Azadin stopped breathing for a second. Upon hearing this, he showed some irritation. Picking a dagger from the ground, he ordered the other two to prepare more fire and head to the west gate. In just a few seconds, they quickly set off toward the location. Meanwhile, Midian and Ishmael remained watching, and she commented that Azadin now only knows how to give orders. At that moment, Azadin was already facing another aberration, landing precise strikes. The monsters were so grotesque that he jokingly compared them to his own appearance when waking up. One of the monsters prepared to attack him, but Azadin swiftly dodged, making the punch miss. Tired, he muttered that he simply wouldn't die, reminding himself that an ordinary human would have been defeated long ago. He noticed that the monsters were continually evolving and their numbers were growing rapidly. Because of this confrontation, he calculated that he would be delayed in reaching where the contractor was. No matter how many attacks he landed, the monsters wouldn't stop. Suddenly, an arrow wrapped in electricity appeared from above and struck the monster, delivering a devastating shock. The enemy, now charred, collapsed to the ground. Behind him, Midian held a bow, smiling with satisfaction. She cheered, claiming that she knew lightning would be effective since the monsters were weak to fire. Shortly after, she showed signs of fatigue and nearly collapsed from having used so much magical power. Ishmael supported her, calling her name in a worried tone. Azadin watched the scene silently. After a moment, he admitted that Midian was very skilled and gave an unexpected compliment, making her radiant. However, he warned her about the dangerous nature of excessive grimoire usage and recommended she rest. Ishmael, in turn, showed dissatisfaction, grinding his teeth. In his thoughts, he reflected on how Midian was working so hard just to be accepted by Azadin. Filled with irritation, Ishmael questioned Azadin about the contractor, asking if he was already dead. Azadin confirmed that yes. In disbelief, Ishmael asked why he kept fighting. He argued that even if the contractor was dead, Azadin couldn't just leave without checking for himself. Azadin, holding his sword, acknowledged that Ishmael was right, but looking back, he declared that for this reason, he would need to kill the leader of these creatures. As the village's western gate burned intensely, a scene of carnage unfolded. On the ground, a villager screamed in despair, his face overtaken by terror. Above him, the shadow of a mutant soldier loomed, laughing cruelly as the destruction around him intensified. The mercenaries, intoxicated by the scent of blood, lost any trace of restraint and indulged in an uncontrolled massacre. As they consumed their victims, their mutations accelerated, and soon grotesque spider-legs legs burst from their backs. Nearby, one of the mutant soldiers devoured a villager, blood splattering onto the ground, staining the feet of a man who observed the scene with a sinister smile. He was the leader of the mercenaries, watching the slaughter without any intention of stopping it. Terry hesitantly approached, questioning whether this was part of the plan. He reminded the captain that the mission was to find the book, but with all this destruction, there was no way its owner would approach the village. The person would only come if everything seemed peaceful from the outside. The mercenary captain glanced at him briefly, his expression unchanged. After a moment of thought, he shrugged and stated that the bodies only needed to be removed. If they eliminated the resistance quickly and cleaned up the mess, the plan could still proceed. As he walked among the corpses, he noticed something drawn on the ground, a triangle inside a circle, surrounded by bloodstains. Frustrated, he kicked one of the mutant soldiers and turned to Terry, mentioning the symbol with irritation. The mercenaries continued devouring the bodies, and Terry, upon realizing the meaning of the drawing, murmured in surprise something about the devil of the golden coins. The captain caught deliberately been weaker. Before he could react, spider legs violently emerged from his chest, piercing his own body. Even amidst unbearable pain, he smiled sinisterly, mocking the attack. To him, this was a joke. That was when a masked man bearing the symbol of the falcon advanced with a sword in hand. Azadin struck directly at the captain's chest, who, driven by instinct, used his newly formed spider legs to block the blow. With a disdainful smile, Azadin taunted him, calling him a true character from the Kirk clan. Before his blade could land, the captain reacted and parried the attack with his own sword. The two engaged in a fierce duel, striking and defending with calculated precision. In an agile movement, Azadin extended his free hand to the captain's sword hilt and wrenched it from his waist. Seizing the opening, he delivered a precise blow that should have shattered his opponent's jaw. However, the captain remained conscious, sustained by the quick reflexes of the spiders writhing inside his body. As the fight raged violently, Terry cowered in a corner, trying to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Watching the battle, he realized that regardless of the winner, the outcome would be disastrous for him. His body trembled, and a desperate longing to be with his mother overtook his mind. At the climax of the fight, Azadin performed a sudden leap, descending with deadly precision upon the captain. The strike severed one of the spider legs, cutting it off. The severed limb fell lifelessly, leaving the captain vulnerable and visibly shaken. Even so, he tried to maintain composure, displaying the authority that had earned him a high-ranking position within the organization. Azadin tightened his grip around his sword, assessing the enemy's resilience. With an arrogant tone, the captain asked if he was part of the heretic clan. As he spoke, new spider legs began to sprout from his body. Confident, he declared that Azadin would never have the skill to kill him. The swordsman, unfazed and slightly intrigued, merely responded with indifference. So what? Before the captain could react, Azadin vanished from his sight and reappeared before him in the blink of an eye. With a mocking tone, he commented that in the end, he was still just a spider. The captain tried to retreat, roaring in rage as his mutant legs moved to attack. But Azadin, cold and meticulous, merely contemplated the transient beauty of nature. Flowers, birds, wind, and the moon, as if he saw the same ephemerality in the art of combat. In the next instant, his body dissipated into a cloud of black smoke. The captain widened his eyes, sensing the enemy's presence behind him, but it was too late. With a clean and precise strike, Azadin decapitated him with his mistletoe technique. The captain's head rolled to Terry's feet, who watched petrified as a small arachnid emerged from the severed neck, trying to regenerate the body. The creature's efforts were in vain. Azadin stepped over the remnants of the spiders without hesitation, ensuring none of them survived. With his cloak billowing, he covered the wound to prevent any possibility of regeneration. The captain's death was absolute and final. When Azadin turned to Terry, the young man's fear intensified. His eyes widened in terror as he realized the swordsman's presence hovering over him. With a curious look, Azadin broke the silence, asking if he was indeed the leader of the mercenaries. Even after his transformation into an arachnid creature, the mercenary captain had retained his sanity, a clear sign he held a high position within the Kirk clan. Terry, overwhelmed by fear, struggled to maintain his composure, though his voice trembled as he tried to explain himself. He tried to justify his situation, but the weight of Azadin's blood-stained sword, even though it was not directly pointed at him, made the threat hang over his head. Desperate, he pleaded for his life, trying to appeal to the supposed honor of the warrior before him. Azadin, however, showed indifference to Terry's social standing. To him, nobility or not, none of that mattered. But before the situation could escalate, Terry hurriedly pulled a necklace from his pocket, his hands trembling as he held a small leather pouch. Urgently, he took out an object from inside, an imperial gold coin. At the sight of the coin, Azadin's expression subtly shifted, though he remained composed. A brief silence settled between them. Terry, realizing the impact of his revelation, tried to strengthen his argument, mentioning that, according to his mother, the coin would allow him to make a request to the heretic clan. Still, Azadin remained unmoved, explaining that simply possessing the coin meant nothing without a formal petition. Frustrated, Terry didn't hesitate to throw the coin toward the triangle drawn on the ground. As soon as the coin touched the center of the symbol, it vanished in a golden flash. Azadin, observing the phenomenon, sheathed his sword and approached, his posture showing a slight relaxation. Terry, trying to reaffirm his position, insisted that he should now be considered Azadin's employer, but Azadin corrected him, making it clear the correct term was petitioner. He asked what the request was that Terry wanted to make. Without hesitation, Terry revealed his main concern, the infection he had suffered from the spider and his fear that it would consume him. His voice carried a tone of desperation, reflecting the gravity of the situation. Azadin sighed heavily. Shortly after, the Emperor's voice echoed, announcing that the petition had been accepted. Reluctantly, Azadin questioned why he had to accept a request from someone like Terry. The young man, feeling insulted, tried to defend himself, but his protest died in the face of Azadin's stern gaze. Before the conversation could go deeper, a new voice called out for Azadin. Turning, he saw Midian and Ishmael approaching. He quickly informed them of the situation, and the reaction was immediate. Midian showed fury, while Ishmael seemed concerned. Midian, pointing at Terry, confirmed with Azadin if this young man had really made a petition. Crossing his arms, Azadin confirmed, showing a mixture of resignation and authority. Turning to Midian, he asked her to use the Divine Ray spell once more, even with reduced intensity. Midian, confused, questioned the request. Azadin, impatient, insisted, making it clear he needed her help. With a touch of hesitation, Midian explained that she had secret techniques, but eliminating the spiders without affecting the host would be a significant challenge. She also questioned whether it was really worth being bound to a golden coin contract. Her words made Azadin reflect. The archer, however, did not intend to help without getting something in return. She suggested she could use the spell, but only if Azadin formally accepted her had been successfully completed. However, soon after, she stumbled slightly, showing signs of fatigue. Azadin, noticing her condition, moved quickly to support her, asking with concern if she was alright. Trying to downplay the situation, Midian let out a laugh and assured him that she just needed a brief rest. She stated that the daughters of Ethar weren't that fragile. Meanwhile, Terry struggled to rise, his body still emitting smoke as the dead spiders oozed from his skin. Azadin watched the scene in silence, satisfied with the effectiveness of the spell in expelling the creatures. Terry's eyes were filled with an intense mixture of rage and shock, sweat dripping from his forehead. The tension in the air grew, signaling that something important was about to happen. Azadin and Midian stared at him attentively. Realizing they were watching him, Terry asked, confused, why they were looking at him that way. Azadin answered coldly, reprimanding him for his intense expression. Terry, misunderstanding the words, pointed at Azadin and retorted, feeling insulted. Nearby, Ishmael, observing Midian close to Azadin and seemingly satisfied by his side, felt a wave of frustration building within him. In a dark tone, he suggested that now that the petition had been fulfilled, it might be best to simply kill Terry. Upon hearing this, Terry panicked, his voice choked with fear. Despite his indignation, he was still weakened by the effects of the lightning, feeling completely helpless. Even a child could kill him at that moment. Azadin intervened, reprimanding Ishmael for his words and telling him not to say such absurd things. Ishmael, irritated, questioned if they couldn't take Terry's life now that his petition had been fulfilled. Firmly, Azadin denied the suggestion, turning his gaze to the sky, where the Emperor's voice still echoed. He explained that a petition made with a gold coin was not just a spell. The granting of the request depended on a genuine need from the petitioner. It wasn't enough to just throw a coin into the triangle and expect something to happen. The Emperor's judgment analyzed the intentions of the requester before granting the petition. He confessed that he had provoked Terry into making the petition without actually believing he would do it. Even though he didn't like the young man, now that the petition had been accepted, he couldn't simply ignore him. Completely exasperated, Ishmael announced his intention to leave. Azadin nodded slightly, acknowledging his departure. Soon after, he began reflecting on what to do about the spider mercenaries still roaming the village. He didn't want the brat to bother him with more demands. However, his attention was diverted when he heard screams coming from the northern gate. Someone was announcing the arrival of the church. The villagers were celebrating, believing they were finally safe. Hearing the applause and cries of relief from the crowd, Azadin concluded that a rescue party from the church had indeed arrived. Realizing it wouldn't be wise to continue pursuing the spider mercenaries, their work on the farm. Azadin thanked him, but Terry, still suspicious, approached and questioned about the barn. He complained about the presence of pigs in the area and questioned how they could use it under those conditions. Without showing patience, Azadin retorted indifferently, implying that Terry was just being lazy. His tone showed frustration with the constant complaints from the other. Azadin then opened the barn door, making a noise that startled Terry. As he entered, he turned to Terry and commented ironically that everything happened for a reason, including the fact that someone like him, a noble, was in that situation. Embarrassed, Terry blushed and tried to murmur a justification. However, Azadin interrupted him, gesturing for him to enter, and with a provocative tone said that he should reflect more on life. Indignant, Terry protested, stating that he had a name. Azadin, unfazed, responded coldly, calling him bastard once again. Inside the barn, Midian and Ishmael were tending to the goats, tying them downstairs while planning to sleep upstairs. Azadin began inspecting the hay, which made Terry worry about the possibility of sharp objects being hidden there. Ignoring his complaints, Azadin mocked that compared to the spider he had been carrying in his stomach, this was nothing. Terry, still uncomfortable, lamented that he wouldn't be able to sleep in such a place. His dissatisfaction with the rustic environment was evident. Midian, already settled near Azadin, took the opportunity to ask curiously about the church. She commented that she had noticed throughout the day that people seemed both welcoming and fearful of the Knights of the Order. While adjusting the hay beneath her, Azadin began to explain. The church was originally founded as an order of holy knights to protect the population from the Kirk gods. Although they had noble blood and could use white magic, they were excluded from from inheritance disputes and saw the church as their only alternative. Azadin sighed, concluding that over time the church had become an extremely powerful institution, causing many conflicts. To support their holy knights, the church required a vast amount of resources, forcing them to extract it from the king and the nobility. As the order grew stronger, the church began to interfere more and more in noble succession wars. What was once considered a heretical sect eventually gained formal recognition from the Eight Kingdoms, now viewed as the Rescue Knights. This happened because the fallen nobility and illegitimate children were only sent to the church. There was a risk that power might become excessively centralized in the church, which is why another kind of Saint Can was necessary to balance this power. Azadin paused, recalling Tark's previous complaint about the sleeping accommodations. He then turned to Midian and suggested they try to rest for a while since Midian needed rest, to which Midian silently agreed with a slight nod. The scene shifted to a nearby forest, where Aiden's group had taken refuge at a farm. The sound of armored boots echoed between the trees as a knight in silver armor and a blue cloak led 5 recruits armed with bows and arrows, ready to attack at the slightest sign of danger. One of the recruits, visibly frustrated, expressed that he thought the mission would be a monster hunt and asked how much longer they would continue. Sir Kriak sternly ordered him to be quiet, explaining that if the beasts heard them, they would flee. The recruit, clearly irritated, responded that his equipment was already making enough noise and that the creatures probably already knew of their presence. He suggested they return, have a drink, and relax for a while since they hadn't spotted a single rabbit so far. One recruit laughed, commenting on the beauty of Sir Kriak's daughter, while another joked, asking if their superior could fall in love with any of them because of their courage. A fourth recruit, mocking, said that free love was inevitable. Sir Kriak, disturbed by their idle chatter, reprimanded them and ordered them to stop talking nonsense and focus on the training. Suddenly, a strange noise from above interrupted the conversation. Sir Kriak, pale with shock, gestured for everyone to be silent. He cautiously approached a bush to investigate the source of the sound. Looking, he saw a creature with imposing claws, wings, and a tail, a wyvern, though small, still dangerous. The recruits, panicked, began shooting arrows in a disorganized manner. Sir Kazra shouted for them to wait, but it was too late. The arrows had already been released. The wyvern, agile, climbed a tree to avoid the attack and disappeared from view. One of the recruits, watching the creature flee, commented that it was a wyvern, but wondered why it wasn't flying. Sir Kriak, observing the retreating creature, murmured to himself that the situation was becoming a serious problem. He realized that the presence of a young wyvern indicated that adult wyverns could be nearby, making the mission even more dangerous. At the edge of the forest, as they neared the location where the wyvern had disappeared, a recruit pointed, saying that the farm was over there. Sir Kriak, visibly annoyed, asked what was wrong now. The recruit said it looked like the location of the farm, and Sir Kriak's face transformed into shock as he saw a farmer struck by an arrow, with his wife crying and embracing him. Observing the tragic scene, Sir Kriak cursed and, in a cold and sinister tone, ordered them to kill the couple. The recruits hesitated, visibly alarmed by the order. Sir Kriak, grinding his teeth in frustration, accused the farmers of having summoned the wyvern and suggested they were in the forest as part of a cult. The recruits, shivering as they processed his words, reluctantly moved toward the couple. One recruit, holding a spear, approached the grieving wife, who was trembling with fear. Another recruit, resigned, drew his sword and took the lives of both. One of the recruits in thought lamented that they had no choice but to follow orders. The scene then shifted to a barn where Azadin and his group were trying to rest, perched by the barn window. The Emperor's voice suddenly called out, waking Azadin. Visibly irritated, he murmured, rumbling about how frustrating it was since not even 2 hours had passed since he had fallen asleep. The Emperor's voice, now grave and solemn, announced that only those who answered the call of justice would be worthy of being his heretics. The Emperor, seated beside him, responded solemnly, stating that only those who answered the call of justice were worthy of being his heretics. Rubbing his tired eyes, Azadin questioned whether such people truly existed. Suddenly, the barn door was thrown open with a crash, and the farmer's son rushed in, his voice filled with desperation as he begged for help. Acting quickly, Azadin leaped to the lower floor while Midian, Ishmael, and Terry, still wrapped in their blankets, slowly stirred awake. Azadin grabbed the boy by the shoulders, his expression marked with concern, and asked what had happened. The boy, crying and panting, was trembling from exhaustion. His face was red, his body drenched in sweat, and his bare feet indicated a hasty escape. Struggling to catch his breath, he managed to say, between sobs, that his father had been murdered in the forest. Azadin's expression darkened at the revelation, and frowning, he asked what the cause of death had been. The boy, still trying to hold back his tears, exclaimed that his father had been killed by an arrow shot by the knights surrounding the farm. Outside, the bodies of numerous farmers were scattered across the ground, victims of the massacre carried out by Sir Krek and his recruits. One of the apprentices pulled his spear from a farmer's He argued that it was a small village, possibly unknown to the rest of the kingdom, which made their actions less risky. Suddenly, one of the recruits bearing a scar on his nose heard hurried footsteps. Turning abruptly, he spotted a woman fleeing and pointing in her direction, exclaimed in surprise. Before he could finish his sentence, the woman quickened her pace. One of the knights in training, armed with a spear, did not hesitate and threw his weapon with all his strength. The projectile cut through the air and struck the woman in mid-flight, causing her to fall heavily to the ground. 3 recruits approached the fallen body. The young man who had thrown the spear relaxed his shoulders and commented indifferently that his hand had slipped due to the blood on his weapon. Kneeling beside the woman, he tried to remove the spear, casually adding that she should relax. However, before he could continue, a stone, hurled with surprising force, struck one of the recruits in the head. Despite the helmet, the impact made his eyes spin with dizziness, and losing his balance, he collapsed beside the woman he had tried to kill. The woman looked at him with a mixture of confusion and fear. Another knight in training, noticing his comrade's fall, shouted in alarm, asking what had happened. Meanwhile, Sir Kruk, who had been observing from a distance, narrowed his eyes, scanning the surroundings. At that moment, another stone was thrown in his direction with incredible speed. Demonstrating sharp reflexes, he raised his sword and with a precise strike, split the stone in half before it could hit him. Holding his blade raised, he commanded authoritatively, demanding to know who was there. Firm footsteps approached, and soon Azadin appeared, rubbing his neck in fatigue. In a bored tone, he commented that he was exhausted and felt he had no strength to fight. A knight in training, holding his spear, charged at him with a challenging grin, taunting him as he prepared his attack. The moment the strike was made, Azadin leaped to avoid the blow, landing lightly soon after. To be considered part of a cult. Frustrated, Sir Kruk insisted that they were sacred knights and that he had the skills to identify members of cults. With arrogance, he asked if Azadin dared to question his judgment and insinuated that Azadin himself might be a cultist. Brandishing his sword, Sir Kruk declared that Azadin clearly did not recognize the authority of the royal church and therefore could only be an enemy. Remaining calm, Azadin replied that he was just a pilgrim. At the moment when Sir Kruk prepared to strike, a bright glow emanated from his sword, temporarily blinding those around him. Worried about an elderly woman nearby, Azadin warned her to close her eyes as he ran to protect her. He immediately recognized the tactic as he had encountered a short-haired illegitimate son who used a similar trick before, first blinding the opponent with intense light, then delivering the blow. This combination of magic and sword, though simple, was a common strategy among sacred knights. However, Azadin possessed unique visual abilities that made him immune to such dazzling effects. Still, he pretended to be disoriented to deceive Sir Kruk. The knight, believing he had the advantage, advanced confidently, but quickly recoiled when 2 arrows pierced the bright light. Quickly, Sir Kruk managed to slice one of the arrows in half with his sword, while the other ricocheted off his armor. Both had been aimed at vulnerable points in his armor, one targeting the inner thigh, the other aimed at the neck joint. The attack demonstrated a deep knowledge of the weak points in armor, indicating the archer's expertise. These arrows have been shot by Ishmael and Midian, who, upon realizing that Azadin was at a disadvantage, decided to intervene with their long-range attacks. Ishmael and Midian quickly approached Azadin. Midian, visibly concerned, asked if his eyes were unharmed. Azadin responded with uncertainty, admitting that he couldn't say for sure. Ishmael, reflecting on the situation, situation noticed an intriguing detail. Azadin didn't even have eyes, so how exactly did he see? Without expressing his surprise, Ishmael shared that on his way there he had encountered two knights who attacked him without warning, but he was able to handle the situation. Midian, processing the information, commented that they hadn't killed the knights, to which Azadin acknowledged their actions as remarkable. Sir Crack observed the two with attention, impressed by Ishmael's skill in archery, especially for someone so young who had defeated two training knights. He then accused the three of belonging to the Herald clan, followers of the Emperor, calling them soulless blasphemers. Convinced that the farm's inhabitants were indeed cultists, Sir Craik tried to justify the massacre. Azadin, however, dismantled his justification, pointing out that they had exterminated indiscriminately without even being sure of the truth. In response, Sir Craik remained silent. Azadin then raised the spear he had taken from one of the knights and explained that the weapon, clearly designed for hunting and not for combat against humans, revealed everything. According to him, the knights were hunting and in the process mistook villagers gathering herbs or mushrooms for wild beasts, firing upon them without thinking. The massacre, in Azadin's view, was nothing more than a desperate attempt to erase the evidence. Furious, Sir Craik ordered Azadin to be silent, calling him a soulless blasphemer. Azadin, ignoring the insult, proposed a deal, that Sir Craik offer reparations to the village and swear to become a penitent knight in search of redemption. If he accepted, Azadin would spare his life. Sir Croc, however, mocked the proposal, confident in his strength, and questioned why he should consider such absurdity, implying that Azadin held a high rank among the heralds. Suddenly, a golden light surrounded Sir Croc, forming a golden hammer in the air. Smiling, Sir Craik proclaimed that capturing Azadin would solve everything. Azadin, amused, feigned hesitation and asked if he really looked like someone of high rank. Ishmael and Midian behind him were shocked by the scene. When Sir Craik raised his sword, the golden hammer in the air moved toward Azadin to strike him. Azadin, quick on his feet, positioned the spear toward the hammer and threw it. The impact created a golden flash and a cracking sound as the spear broke. The hammer then fell to the ground with a crash, forcing Azadin, Midian, and Ishmael to retreat to avoid the impact. At that moment, Azadin noticed Midian's quiver and without hesitation grabbed some arrows, informing him that he would borrow them. Sir Craik continued attacking with his golden hammer, and Azadin, agile, leaped from side to side to avoid the brutal strikes. While dodging, he thought to himself about the incredible brute strength of his opponent. He then jumped backward and pulled a hidden bow from beneath his shirt, wrapped around his waist. With two arrows loaded, he aimed high and shot them. Sir Croc, preparing another strike with his hammer, moved his hand to attack from behind. Midian, alarmed, shouted to warn him. Noticing the arrows, Sir Craik mocked the attempt, convinced that Azadin couldn't even aim properly. Then, confident in his advantage, he advanced to deliver a crushing blow. With the sword in hand, Azadin remained calm, holding the bow in one hand. The moment Sir Croc's blade descended to strike him, his body disappeared and the sword struck only the ground. Confused, the knight wondered where Azadin had gone and what exactly had happened. Suddenly, Azadin appeared behind him. Grabbing an arrow out of the air, he quickly prepared it and shot it above the knight's head. With no time to react, the arrow pierced his skull, ending the fight in that instant. Midian's eyes widened at what he had just witnessed. Looking at the fallen body of Sir Croc, he tried to comprehend what kind of technique Azadin had used to strike his enemy with such precision. At that same moment, another arrow returned and Azadin grabbed it again. After observing it for a moment, he explained that it was a technique called arrow return. The scene shifted to a barn at dusk. Azadin returned, carrying the lifeless body of a farmer, gently laying him on the ground. An arrow remained embedded in his belly, evidence of what had occurred. A child ran toward the lifeless bodies of their parents, screaming in despair. Amid tears, the child fell beside the mother, sobbing as they held her hand. Azadin stood still, watching the grieving child. His gaze then shifted to a training knight who was bound with ropes. With a firm tone, he questioned what their choice would be from that moment on. He made it clear that, if they offered reparations to the families of the victims and swore to become penitent knights of atonement, their lives would be spared. The bound knights exchanged glances, clearly aware of the desperate situation they were in. After a moment of hesitation, one of them spoke up, accepting the conditions set by Azadin. Before he could respond, an outraged voice echoed from behind him, interrupting the conversation. Turning around, Azadin saw three farmers approaching. Among them, a woman held a scythe, visibly shaken. An elderly man, overcome with pain, accused the knights of mercilessly killing his son, comparing the act to a cruel slaughter. The woman, consumed by fury, rejected the idea that the knights were simply cultists. She reminded them that her family had followed the church for years, and even in times of drought and scarcity, they had never rebelled against their faith. Her gaze, now filled with hatred, made it clear she would not accept those explanations. One of the bound knights, full of disdain, mocked the farmers' indignation, insulting them and questioning how they dared speak of a sacred knight in such a manner. However, his provocation was brutally interrupted. The woman advanced without hesitation and with a precise strike of her scythe decapitated him. Panic took over the remaining knights, but the woman showed no intention of stopping. Her gaze turned to another one of them, and without hesitation, she declared that their lives were in themselves a curse upon the farmers. Without giving him a chance to argue, she executed him instantly, staining the ground with his blood. Azadin watched everything in silence, reflecting on the uncertain fate awaiting those farmers. He knew that by killing the knights, they would lose the protection of the laws and be forced to abandon their lands to live as nomads. The life they had chosen for themselves would be difficult and filled with challenges. As the sun set, Azadin knelt beside the freshly dug graves and said a silent prayer. When he stood up, he looked at Ishmael and Midian and reassured them, stating that at least now they would no longer have to fear those knights returning as undead. Midian, lost in thought, questioned whether that wasn't blasphemy. For her, it was unthinkable to consecrate the sacred knights of the church using the same rites as the Knights of Redemption. Ishmael, intrigued, pondered whether Azadin would have truly granted forgiveness to the knights had they kept their promise of redemption. Azadin turned to him, offering a slight smile as he reflected on the question. After a brief moment of silence, he responded with his own question, comparing an oath made to an enemy to an oath made to a stone by the side of the road. He mentioned a past judgment that dealt with agreements made with the Herald clan. According to the radiant law of the Order, every vow must be fulfilled, but the Arogas, for lacking souls, were comparable to mere stones in the way. Thus, any oath made to them had no value or meaning. Azadin concluded that no matter how dishonorable an action was, if its target was a member of the Herald clan, the action was automatically forgiven. Even if the sacred knights had promised to become Knights of Atonement, there were no guarantees that such a promise had been made sincerely. In the end, it didn't even matter. He scratched his face before adding that this was simply the law of Hubis. As people of Hubis, the sacred knights were bound to follow their own rules and principles. Ishmael, still unconvinced, pressed on with his question. He wanted to know what would happen if the knights made the vow and then broke it later. Looking at the graves before him, he questioned how the pain and resentment of those who had lost their families could be alleviated. Azadin turned his gaze to the horizon before answering that survival was more important than revenge. He mentioned that there was a child among the survivors and that now that their thirst for vengeance had been quenched, they would have to accept a nomadic life. It would be a hard road for them, but inevitable. Ishmael fell silent for a moment, muttering to himself. Midian then approached and with a questioning look asked if all of that had been done by the farmers. Standing beside a grave, Azadin confirmed but found it curious that Ishmael, despite being so concerned with survival, had hesitated to kill the sacred knights. He ran his hand through his hair before facing Midian with a slight smile. He explained that he didn't like the idea of killing an already defeated enemy. If he were in the middle of a battle with his strength at its limit and no other choice, then the situation would be different. Ishmael was surprised by Azadin's unshakable confidence. He seemed impressed by the fact that Azadin had shown such conviction even in the face of the sacred knights of the church. Azadin then shifted his gaze, analyzing the surroundings. His sudden distraction made Midian frown before asking where that mama's boy had gone. The young man was nowhere to be found. Midian shrugged and smiled ironically, explaining that she had seen him flee earlier. For her, this was an advantage as it meant one less mouth to feed. The rustling of leaves interrupted the conversation. Immediately, everyone became alert, preparing for any potential threat. From the shadows, a familiar figure emerged. Terry announced his presence, assuring that he was still there. Azadin stared at him in disbelief, but then sighed and resumed walking. He donned his pilgrim's attire once again, adjusting it as he walked. He muttered to himself about the long journey awaiting him at dawn, wondering if he would ever know rest. Beside him, Terry yawned and stretched. Midian observed him and grumbled, wondering why he was so tired since he apparently hadn't done anything the day before. Suddenly, a child's voice, full of pain, echoed through the air, accusing Azadin of being responsible for everything. He turned toward the source of the scream and saw a group of farmers gathered. Their children were clinging to them, crying. Among them, a young girl, her face twisted with anger and tears streaming down, screamed again. If Azadin had never appeared on their farm, her parents would still be alive. A woman next to the girl quickly hugged her, murmuring reassuring words. Soon after, she raised her eyes to Azadin and said something that he still didn't know how to respond to. With an apologetic tone, the woman leaned slightly and murmured that the child was still too young to understand everything. However, the girl simply clung to her mother's clothes and cried in silence. Azadin approached one of the farmers and asked where they planned to go. The man hesitated for a moment before replying that they intended to head southwest, seeking refuge with some relatives. His gaze fell on the grieving children before adding that for now, they would remain hidden while deciding what to do with them. Azadin briefly reflected. The southwest lay in the opposite direction from Sazma. The farmer sighed wearily and looked at the land around him. The drought had been worsening and there was no longer any reason to stay on the farm. Azadin nodded and declared that their paths would part here. Without another word, he turned to leave, but was interrupted when the farmer called out to him again. Azadin stopped and glanced over his shoulder, slightly intrigued. The man met his gaze and with a respectful tone, wished for the Emperor's blessing to fall upon him. For a moment, Azadin simply stared at him, then gave a small smile before continuing on his way. Nearby, a child tugged at the farmer's sleeve and whispered quietly, questioning if the Emperor's blessing was, in fact, a curse in disguise. She recalled that her uncle had always warned her never to speak the Emperor's name. At that very instant, the spirit of the Emperor rested on Azadin's shoulder. His spectral form subtle but imposing. With a reflective tone, he remarked that people saw him as a plague. Still, he had devoted his life to guiding them towards civilization and knowledge. Azadin looked at his ghostly visage with an ironic smile before replying that he himself was the only one responsible for this fate. After all, he had dug his own ruin. The emperor furrowed his brows slightly but remained silent. Azadin continued, stating that he should have established a proper line of succession long ago. After a brief moment of contemplation, the emperor let out a quiet sigh and admitted that he agreed with this. Still, he closed his eyes with a serene expression, stating that the peace he had forged, even if only for a single generation, was a valuable achievement. His gaze turned to Azadin as he reminded him that for the Yas divine clan or the Yas Shinto clan, a generation was not such a brief period. Azadin chuckled softly and gave a slight nod without much enthusiasm. With that, he and his group resumed their journey, leaving the farmers behind. As they watched them depart, one of the farmers turned to his companions and with a gentle smile suggested that they also leave. The woman beside him returned the smile before agreeing. Survival came first. Azadin and his group traveled through arid lands near the rocky hills. The dry wind kicked up dust along the path, and they proceeded in silence for a time. It was Terry, the so-called mama's boy, who broke the silence. His tone was one of admiration as he commented on Azadin's impressive feat, defeating multiple sacred knights of the church in a single battle. Midian shot him an irritated glance before retorting, asking if he had even watched the fight properly, considering he spent the entire time hiding. Terry shrank back at the accusation. Forcing an awkward smile, he tried to justify himself but stumbled over his words, unable to come up with a convincing answer. Azadin, now with his eyes covered by fresh bandages, sighed and asked him to spare the exaggerations. He warned him not to spread unnecessary rumors. His tone became colder as he raised a single finger in warning. If Terry started telling everyone that he had defeated a sacred knight, it could cause serious problems. The young man froze completely. A chill ran down his spine as he swallowed hard. Meanwhile, Azadin pondered another concern. It would be a huge inconvenience for him if these rumors spread. However, his thoughts quickly shifted to another matter. Those strange gold coins and the group of mercenaries still needed to be investigated. It seemed there was no choice. Azadin had no option but to keep Terry around, at least for now. Just then, a voice called from the side of the road. A merchant, beside a small stall, waved to them with an inviting smile. He offered a cup of tea before they continued their journey. Above the establishment, a flag fluttered in the wind, catching Azadin's attention. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the symbol. It was clear the man had ties to the Merchants Guild of the trade route. Without hesitation, the group accepted the offer and took a seat near the stall. The merchant served them tea, placing a cup in front of Azadin, but then turned his gaze to Tari before quietly asking about the night. Azadin took a sip of the drink and responded calmly. He stated that the man was a petitioner of the golden coin, meaning there was no risk of information leaking. At that moment, the merchant's friendly expression vanished. His face grew serious and he leaned slightly forward. Without beating around the bush, he asked where the Naz Herald of 3 months intended to go. Azadin inwardly sighed. That man hadn't wasted any time in dropping the false merchant's smile. Maintaining a neutral tone, he replied that he was heading to Sazma and asked if there was any reason for the curiosity. The merchant crossed his arms and closed his eyes for a moment before explaining that, in fact, there was a reason. However, Azadin was free to decline the offer if he wished. After a brief pause, the merchant's gaze fixed on Azadin before continuing. The task involved eliminating a wyvern and a group of raiders. Azadin didn't even react. He simply placed his empty cup on the counter and, unfazed, asked for something to eat. The merchant blinked, confused by the response. Azadin leaned back in his seat, indifferent, and specified what he wanted. If it were sweets made of sugar and mugwort, he would accept the job. The merchant gritted his teeth, clearly frustrated. Azadin, for his part, simply rested his arm on the counter and extended his hand, waiting. With no other choice, the merchant let out a resigned sigh, realizing there was no room for negotiation. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys. Azadin receives his snack while the goats peacefully drink water next to the cart. With the food in hand, he asks for more details about the task they need to accomplish. The merchant explains that just ahead, the Order of the Saviors is carrying out relief work. However, the man reveals that they are pressuring merchants to donate, which makes Midian worried. While eating, Azadin considers that if the donations from the wealthier help the refugees, then it would be acceptable. The merchant continues, somewhat displeased. He says that to avoid the order, many take dangerous shortcuts with wyverns and bandits. The man adds that the bandits are refugees on the run, and the order investigates codes. Then he asks whether Azadin will really accept the mission, reminding him that the guild master advised against getting involved with the caravan. Azadin states that he needs to do it as it's about helping people. The merchant, with an ironic smile, asks if this noble task is to the young man's liking. The comment leaves Midian furious with the merchant. Irritated, she asks Azadin if she can take care of the man, while the young man continues eating. Quickly, Midian moves in and covers the merchant's mouth, who is surprised by her action. She grabs him by the collar, scolding him angrily for his audacity and calling him insolent. Azadin takes a sip and warns Midian to show respect to the messenger, or there will be consequences. He intervenes, ordering her to stop as the warrior's blade is dangerously close. The leader of the trio approaches and scolds his companion, reminding her that although she is an aether on official duty, the man holds a higher rank. Azadin affirms that she knows this and that their lineage also values respect for elders. The young man then instructs Midian to sheath her sword, and the frightened merchant quickly agrees. The young woman puts away her sword. Azadin apologizes to the merchant for the unpleasant scene, mentioning the tea, but the man tells him not to worry. The man with the covered face then urges the group to move on, reminding them they have wyverns and bandits to hunt, and Midian agrees. The merchant watches them leave, still deep in thought. He grumbles, feeling he was made a fool of by their games. The group continues along the arid road, mounted on their creatures. While riding, the leader turns to Midian and before anything else thanks her. However, he warns her not to mess with people connected to Sabanga, citing the fate of her predecessor, and the young woman understands. A white-haired young man, Tarki, hears the conversation and asks if Sabanga is a family from the messenger's lineage, surprising them. Tarki reflects that the messenger's lineage seems more organized than he imagined, beginning to speculate about them. Azadin, irritated, tells the noble that he knows exactly what he's thinking. The group's leader warns Tarki to forget any request for help in becoming a count, but the other insists that with his skills, it could be possible. The white-haired young man argues that Count Kazel is young and should be thinking about succession anytime soon, showing his concern. Azadin then asks if Tarki's mother has money and influence, while the image of a noble appears. He explains that Count Kazel can easily extract fortunes from the families of suitors, including Tarki's, just by hinting at the title. The Count, with a cunning smile, will maintain that situation as long as possible, exploiting everyone, according to Azadin. Tarki laments that he can't just sit back, but his new acquaintance asks him to do exactly that, since his people always cause trouble. Ishmael points ahead, telling Azadin they seem to have arrived at the inn mentioned by the merchant. The trio approaches the building, which stands out in the landscape. The man with the covered face smiles, happy to finally see a familiar face. Midian reacts with surprise, asking if the familiar face is a woman's. The inn rises imposingly against the sunset sky. A cute goat named Suratina appears, chewing on some leaves. Azadin, beaming, embraces her lovingly. Midian and Ishmael look astonished, with the young woman realizing that the familiar face was just a goat. Their leader explains that he asked the merchants guild to bring Suratina there, as the place where they met was too dry. In any case, Azadin invites them to enter the inn. His hand reaches for the doorknob. He and Tarki enter the establishment. The noble is shocked to see who's inside, asking, "You?" Two people at the table are also surprised, one of them calling Tarki brother. Azadin discreetly asks the white-haired young man who they are, and he reveals they are his half-siblings. The man with the covered face then deduces that they must be his rivals, but Tarki hesitates to confirm. One of the half-siblings, Kaka, greets the newcomers and introduces himself, followed by Chico. Azadin, smiling, says they are pilgrims and thanks Tarki for the escort. Kaka, surprised, asks his brother why he's escorting pilgrims and where the mercenaries are. Tarki reveals with regret that the mercenaries betrayed them, leaving Kaka and Chico shocked by the news. Despite the surprise, the host invites them in to sit and talk while they eat. After the meal, Kaka comments that his brother has been through a rough time. He then asks what his plans are for the future. With a slightly tense smile, the noble replies that he is returning to Salazma. He adds that since the three travelers are also headed there, they'll go together. Chico, however, warns that there's a base of the Order of the Saviors just ahead on the road. Ishmael discreetly watches Midian, thinking she's beautiful. Kaka warns that a girl like her could be taken by the Order, suggesting they avoid contact. Azadin, eating an apple, questions whether the Order would really take someone. He states with conviction that those who serve the three archangels wouldn't force anyone. The two brothers exchange skeptical glances at the statement. Kaka comments with a touch of irony that Azadin seems to be quite a devout man of faith. Night falls over the inn and the full moon lights up the sky. Inside the establishment, a group of men drinks and chats. With his face red from drinking, one man asks if the young man is the pilgrim traveling with them. Kaka explains that they are his employers, merchants bypassing the order through the forest, while the drunk boasts about helping them travel easily. The man keeps bragging, mentioning that others pay a high price to hire mercenaries. Another man at the table with a mustache laughs heartily and claims they are his benefactors. Azadin seems a bit uncomfortable with the conversation. He thinks that to reduce monster attacks in the forest, it's better to be in a large group. He continues, saying that monsters usually hunt alone, and in the end, everyone helps each other, despite the merchant's mockery. The men at the table laugh loudly at the situation, leaving Tarki visibly uneasy. Azadin thinks it was a good idea to have sent Midian, Ishmael, and Chico to the room earlier. One of the merchants offers the young man a drink, suggesting they should start the journey on good terms since the road ahead is long. He politely refuses, saying he's a pilgrim and therefore doesn't drink. The mustached man finds the response too uptight for someone so young, and the others agree, laughing. Another merchant, curious, asks if he can see with the bandages on his face. The young man replies that he can see through the gaps, but admits that the bandages end up becoming a source of teasing. Excited, the man asks him to remove the bandages and show his face, but Azadin says the wound looks bad because of the pus. Tarki's hand appears, making a gesture for the merchant to stop with the questions. The noble asks them to leave his companion alone, explaining that he doesn't enjoy those kinds of jokes. The drunk insists that a lively conversation needs a good topic to flow. He then asks if the kids Azadin brought, referring to Midian and Ishmael, are his children. The man comments that the girl was very pretty, and Azadin denies it, explaining that they're his younger cousins. The mustached man bursts out laughing at the response. With a lewd look, the same man suggests Azadin give them the girl as an adopted daughter, promising to take good care of her. Azadin's expression turns serious and he remains silent for a moment. Tarki intervenes, thinking the proposal is a joke, but the merchant insists it would be a great idea. The trio's leader apologizes, explaining that the girl's parents are waiting for her in the next village, while internally thinking about their clearly vile intentions. The first merchant looks a bit disappointed by the rejection. He then sighs, saying if that's the case, nothing can be done. The man refills Azadin's cup, insisting that he drink at least a little. The young man accepts the drink, commenting that continuing to refuse would be too rude. As soon as he takes a sip, the merchant brings up another topic, asking if they heard a certain rumor. Azadin holds the cup alert as the man mentions a woman from the messenger clan who lives at a sawmill along the way. Another man at the table gets agitated, asking if the messengers aren't considered monsters, but the first one asks them to listen. He explains that the woman's father is from the clan and conceived her during a journey, but couldn't take her to the land of the messengers. A dark image shows a woman in chains, while the man continues, saying the owner of the sawmill bought her as a slave, raised her, and notes that she has a well-used face. The merchant smiles wickedly, satisfied with the story he's telling. He recalls that slavery is illegal and fears the church, but the man cuts him off, saying no one cares about half-breeds and that he too like a slave like that. Azadin, with his back to the table, listens to the degrading conversation about the slave and the children she might have had over the years. The mustached man adds that for a good bottle of liquor, it's possible to spend a night with her. He slams the table, asking who wants to be the first, causing his companion's cup to topple. Everyone at the table is startled by the sudden action and notices Azadin standing. The young man seems to chew on something with restrained anger, clenching his fists. Suddenly, he covers his face with his hands, pretending to cry loudly and with sobs. The merchant, surprised, asks if he's crying while the drink spills on the table with the movement. Azadin jumps up, shouting that all of this is revolting, startling the man in front of him. Pointing at the merchants, he indignantly asks if the subjects of the Holy King are truly so corrupted. The two drunk men grab his shoulders, one asking what he's talking about, while the other tries to justify himself, saying he only mentioned wanting to make money and have a slave. The young man shouts that that is exactly the problem and breaks free forcefully. The mustached man, startled, is left speechless. Azadin then begins a fervent speech about the Holy Archangel of the Trinity, who granted the power of white magic to those who follow the three virtues and sealed himself away on the peninsula of Nehe. He goes on explaining that as people have strayed from the virtues, the Order of the Saviors has been losing its strength. With his arms raised, he proclaims that the age of Jupiter is approaching and calls upon everyone to return to the three sacred virtues. He yells for them to turn away from worldly pleasures and corruption, while the merchant thinks the young man is completely drunk. The bearded man steps in calmly, suggesting that everyone go to sleep since they need to leave early the next morning. Still worked up, Azadin insists he can go to his room alone, refusing any help. As they leave, the merchants grumble that the young man ruined the fun and question whose idea it was to offer him a drink. The young man's hand reaches the doorknob. He enters the room still with a toothpick between his lips. Tarki, who followed him, asks if he was just pretending to be drunk. He confirms. The young man explains that he knew religious fanatics aren't welcome, while Midian and Ishmael seem to be sleeping peacefully. Suddenly, Midian pops out from under the covers with her face humorously painted, saying he's not a fanatic, just a drunk. Surprised, he asks if she was still awake and heard everything. She replies that actually the entire bar heard it. Ishmael sits on the edge of the bed, wanting to know if the performance was because of the woman from the messenger's clan. Azadin reflects, saying he didn't receive a proper report from the previous 10th leader and needs to confirm whether she truly belongs to the clan. Lying in bed, Midian asks seriously if he intends to kill them if it turns out the merchants were telling the truth. With a grim expression, he replies that, depending on the situation, yes. As soon as the sun rises, its light illuminates the top of a distant mountain. Meanwhile, in the forest, a soldier gives instructions to the group on how to proceed when spotting monsters. There, Azadin observes the number of people, surprised that there are more than he expected. At that moment, Midian, standing beside him, senses something strange in the air, and Azadin recognizes her sharp instinct. Ahead, the path through the forest appears dark and dense, making the leader of the trio confirm the feeling. With a serious expression, Azadin identifies traces of dark magic nearby. However, the other mercenaries move on, and the young man realizes that only his small group noticed the danger. Then Midian calls him, seeking an answer. Quickly, with his hand in the bag, he instructs her to stay close to the goat. Just ahead, near them lies the body of a wolf, making them feel that something is approaching. Indeed, hidden among the bushes, 3 wolves with red eyes stalk the group. Faced with this, Midian and her leader become tense and warn that danger is coming. Then, a monstrous wolf with sharp fangs growls in their direction. Immediately afterward, 3 wolves charge, revealing themselves as undead. Upon seeing this, one of the older mercenaries shouts for everyone to form into battle formation. The soldiers promptly form a barrier with their shields and spears, waiting for the attack. Thus, the entire group prepares for the confrontation with a pack of zombie wolves. Up close, the creature with its mouth full of teeth growled. As they advance, the zombie wolves approach the defensive line. Noticing the tactic, the mercenary leader observes that the creatures are not attacking directly. It becomes clear to Azadin that the monsters still retain memories from when they were alive and are trying to surround them. Analyzing the situation, the young man with the covered face focuses his gaze, identifying a vulnerable point. Immediately, he warns of danger to the rear, where a wolf appears to attack 2 men. The creature then bites one of the merchants, who screams in pain. Desperate, he tries to defend himself. At that moment, Tarki appears swiftly, shouting for them to move aside before attacking the wolf. Without wasting time, he draws his sword. With a precise motion, he strikes the zombie wolf. Watching this scene, Azadin and Midian exchange approving glances at Tarki's skill. Soon after, Kaka runs over to his brother, worried. Tarki, standing over the fallen wolf, downplays the injury. Even so, the two exchange glances, and the older one grumbles about the cunning of the creatures. Strategically, the zombie wolves keep out of reach of spears and swords. Suddenly, one of the merchants looks forward in fear, recognizing someone. He then calls out for Karim, a shadowy figure approaching among the wolves. While the merchant asks about Karim and the others, the soldier's leader urges caution, sensing something wrong. To their horror, Karim's hand holding a cleaver is revealed, and so it's revealed he is a zombie, accompanied by another, causing the mercenaries to scream in terror. In the midst of the chaos, a soldier warns that they'll be completely surrounded if they don't act. Faced with the threat, the bearded merchant orders the archers to fire their arrows. With the command, arrows fly toward the advancing zombie wolves. One of them misses a zombie wolf. The archer appears frustrated, while Midian and Ishmael observe. Reluctantly, Azadin sighs, picking up 2 stones from the ground, clearly unwilling to get involved. Then he quickly positions himself to throw the stones with precision. With force, the stone hits a zombie wolf with a violent impact to the head. Surprised, the merchant archer and the soldier's leader look shocked at the power of the throw. With determination, Azadin announces he will handle the wolves. Next, he instructs the mercenary leader to focus on the zombies, and the man agrees. Thus, the older soldier uses his shield to defend himself and attacks a zombie with his spear. Likewise, Kaka fights fiercely, taking down a zombie with a precise strike from his spear. Indeed, the force of the blow is evident as he pierces the undead. With that, the young warrior manages to finish off the zombie with his weapon. Shiko remains in a combat stance over the fallen enemy, panting but firm. As the battle continues, Azadin notes that, fortunately, the mercenaries are fighting well. However, the organized movement of the undead makes him suspect a sorcerer is behind it. Faced with this, and with a serious expression, he concludes that the battle won't end easily. Above, an owl silently observes the entire scene from a tree branch. After the fight, the merchant archer confronts another angrily about facing unexpected zombies. Still unsatisfied, he complains that they were hired to hunt a wyvern. The other replies they didn't know either. Trying to calm things down, the mercenary suggests the group leader move on since the zombies were defeated. However, the older soldier angrily questions how they can be sure there's no more danger. The merchant archer becomes terrified. At that moment, Azadin, arms crossed, asks in a challenging tone if they really think they can go back. Surprised, the merchant and the soldier's leader look at the young man, confused by the question. As they turn around, the entire group stares shocked at a gigantic, twisted tree that has appeared in their path. With horror, they realize the road they came from has simply vanished, locked by the forest. Azadin realizes that the sorcerer blocked their escape and intends to kill everyone there. The merchants argue nervously, blaming each other for the situation and for suggesting the path, while he also thinks he doesn't want to let them live if they did something to the woman from the clan. However, he reflects that without being certain of the facts, they can't simply let them die. He calls out to Tarki, who turns to listen. He asks him to try to calm the mercenaries, and the noble is surprised by the request. He argues that a pilgrim would have no influence, but a nobleman would, so he agrees. Tarki turns his back, thoughtful for a moment. He rubs his chin, considering the best approach. With authority, he addresses the mercenaries, calling them worms and demanding their attention. Midian and Ishmael exchange glances, a bit surprised by his tone. He introduces himself as Tarkiv, son of Duke Kazal, and states that his life is more valuable than theirs, making the men uneasy. He continues, saying he is willing to uncover the secrets of the place and questions whether mere creatures like them only think of fleeing. With a confident smile, he calls on them to fight for him and witness his glory, promising that they would have something to be proud of. The noble boasts of being the best, while the mercenaries glare at him angrily, and Azadin and his companions look embarrassed. Despite their irritation, the mercenaries decide to continue through the dense forest. Tarki and Azadin watch the group move away, and the noble asks why they're leaving like that. Kaka approaches his brother, lamenting the way he spoke to the men. He explains that if people disperse, they'll become more vulnerable, and Tarki questions why they didn't follow the merchants. Shiko argues that a spell on the forest makes returning dangerous. A hand appears. Azadin identifies the substance as Butuma's shamanic powder. Shiko is startled, recognizing it as extremely powerful black magic. He comments that with this intensity and the presence of zombies, the sorcerer may be a vengeful spirit. Kaka and Shiko smile at each other. Seeing this, Azadin thinks the brothers are useful. Worried, Midian asks if this means the woman from the messenger's clan is dead. Azadin replies that they can't be sure yet. He explains that if she belongs to the clan, she may have inherited special talents and even mastered black magic without dying. If she's alive, he believes they might find traces of her in the village and be able to talk. Midian and Ishmael mention the possibility that she's still alive. The group approaches a logging village with rustic buildings. The door of one of the establishments shuts quickly. They look at the village houses, which seem deserted. Kaka observes that the inner part of the village is silent and that the only zombies seem to have been the ones they fought earlier. The group walks cautiously through the village. Kaka suddenly stops, looking toward a barn. The others approach, and Kaka wonders if there's a zombie inside. Shiko gets tense, imagining it could be a zombie pretending to be human or someone calling for help. From inside the barn, a voice shouts that they're a real person, a paladin of the Church of the King. Azadin and Shiko exchange a surprised glance. Then he removes the barn's lock. A person in armor stumbles out, screaming in fear. The paladin falls to the ground, and Kaka watches curiously as the protagonist holds the wooden door. Azadin approaches the fallen paladin, who seems dazed. Shiko warns it's dangerous to go alone, but the paladin stands up. The newly freed figure says they need to do something alone and asks not to be followed, running into a house. Everyone watches the figure disappear, confused. Midian seems to finally understand something, wearing a relieved expression. The paladin returns, an out calmer, and thanks them for getting her out of there, apologizing for taking so long to introduce herself. Someone comments that it seems everything worked out without problems. The paladin introduces herself as Mega, an officer of the Diocese of Salasma, with a smile. Azadin repeats the title, surprised, and concludes that she is part of the elite of the Church of the King. He asks how someone so important ended up locked away in such a remote place, while Midian and Ishmael also appear curious. Maya explains that she came to the village on a sacred mission. She says that while she was investigating the warehouse, monsters suddenly attacked her. An image shows Maya being caught by surprise by the monsters. She reveals that the villagers, panicking, locked her inside. Maya laments that her weapon was with her horse and thus couldn't break down the door. She considers that she could have used holy magic, but it would have been dangerous to herself, and she notes the silence of the villagers, or rather, of the zombies. Azadin informs her that the other merchants and mercenaries who came with her were defeated along the way and decided to turn back. She then asks if he saw any other paladins around. She explains that she received orders from the bishop to exterminate the wyverns in the area and that her father, who trained knights, had arranged to meet her nearby. Azadin remains silent for a moment, then asks if her father is also a paladin. Maya confirms with a proud smile. She states that her father is a great paladin and that both of them have protected the laws of the Church of the King for generations. Azadin thinks that this logging village is connected to the farm they passed earlier. He then considers the terrible possibility that the knight he killed was Maya's father. He reflects on the irony of the phrase "for generations," knowing she may not have much to be proud of. He remembers that by the rules, paladins of the Church of the King are not supposed to have children. He comments that he didn't see any zombie horses and asks Maya if her weapon was with the horse. Maya confirms, adding that her gear was with it too. He suggests she join them to search for the horse while they scout the area, possibly finding her companions. Maya smiles, thinking it's a great idea and praising his thoughtfulness. Now joined by Maya, the group walks through the village as Azadin watches them. With a grim expression, he reflects on how cruel fate can be. He and Midian enter one of the village buildings. After a brief inspection, he concludes there's nothing special there. Midian asks what his plans are now, and he reveals that he intends to use the village as a base to find the black magic sorcerer. She explains that if the cause is human, it's probably someone specific. Azadin explains that black magic catastrophes are usually caused by vengeful spirits. He says vengeful spirits arise from unjust deaths, and he suspects the half-blood woman from the messengers. He concludes that if she was defeated, she likely became a vengeful spirit. A hand holds an arrowhead over the campfire. Around the fire, everyone is gathered in the abandoned village. Ishmael complains that making arrows is annoying, especially since he can't use his moon bow. Azadin replies that in order to hide their identity and still be useful, there's no other option. Midian questions whether they can really make arrows in such a crude manner. Azadin states that if they're better than goblin arrows, that's good enough, and they'll use cheap iron tips. Midian holds an arrowhead thoughtful. She then asks if he intends to convince the sorceress if she's still alive. Wondering why she asks that, Midian explains that if it were her, she would kill, but he values aesthetics. He considers that it's more likely the sorceress has died and become a vengeful spirit, but it's not impossible she learned dark magic while still alive. He thinks that sad memories and a painful past can awaken compassion. He reflects that one can't use a broken vase just out of pity. He continues, saying it's cheaper to buy a new one, and an image of a figure breaking appears. Midian looks at Azadin, sitting near the fire. She then says that if he manages to convince her, she'll start to respect him. Azadin thinks that was unexpected, and that he's beginning to understand something. Midian smiles, understanding that protecting the people is something beautiful. Ishmael intervenes, saying that's enough. He questions whether it's worth talking about forgiveness for someone who caused a disaster with dark magic and still talk about respect. Ishmael looks at Midian, asking why she's so interested. He grabs his hair forcefully, questioning her interest in the son of a blind trader, reminding her that not even the clan elders showed such feelings. Azadin stands up, ignoring the argument that starts. He says it doesn't matter whether they respect him or not, because he just does what must be done, and walks toward the exit. Ishmael gets irritated with Azadin's attitude, especially for ignoring Midian's interest, and mutters that he's annoying. While cleaning, he decides that should be enough. Tarki and Maya walk through the dark and silent village. She comments that the fog is dense and doesn't seem natural, sensing that they are getting closer. Manga spots Azadin, Kaka, and Chico in the distance at the entrance of a building. Seeing this, she wonders who that person really is. Maya thinks Azadin doesn't seem like a mere pilgrim, since he organizes strategies like a commander, and the other admits not knowing who he is. She questions whether someone trained in command wouldn't be better, since that task would normally be handled by someone from her order. Midian counters, reminding her that the trained person was locked in the warehouse, and if not for them, would still be there. With a proud smile, she hugs her arrows, while Maya seems embarrassed and Tarki observes. Suddenly, Maya looks to the side, startled. Tarki also notices something and turns in the same direction. A horde of zombies with glowing red eyes slowly emerges from the forest darkness. The undead stagger forward along the trail toward the group. The sorcerer, watching from above, laughs and comments that they are quite interesting. A shadowy figure with large wings appears, imposing in the night sky. A massive black wing stands out against the moon's faint light. A wyvern flies over the village and Tarki yells that it's a wyvern. Azadin asks the winged creature if she's from the clan of the messengers, and if she massacred that village. The wyvern, now landed and facing Azadin, asks how they found out her identity. The boy replies that he heard it from the merchants. The wyvern confirms, blaming the bastards who enslaved her and stole everything because of her clan blood. Azadin looks to the dark sky and asks if she's still alive. The wyvern responds with conviction and a roar that of course she's alive. Hearing this, he reflects that he's not sure, since most vengeful spirits insist they're still alive. Kaka, from the ground, watches the protagonist on the roof, asking how she obtained that power. Chico and Kaka comment that the discussion is dragging on, and the wyvern challenges them to become her controlled dead if they want to find out. The wyvern attacks with her sharp wings. She shoots toward Kaka and Chico, who scream in surprise. Azadin shouts at the wyvern to calm down, saying they have nothing to do with those who mistreated her. Midian peeks through a crack in the door, frightened by the battle. She then runs into a building, seeking shelter. Then she appears behind the protagonist quickly. Worried, she asks Azadin if they should reveal they're also from the clan of the messengers. Azadin, on the rooftop, questions what they would do about Tarkiv's half-brother and the paladin if they found out. Ishmael appears on the rooftop and says they'll have to kill them. Azadin knew he'd say that. Azadin scolds both of them, saying they shouldn't treat human life so lightly, not even that of the King's Church paladins. They look down, questioning whether there's a better solution. He reminds them that he himself said the strongest takes everything. Preparing his bow, he states that there's only one way to solve this. An arrow of light is fired, rising into the night sky with great power. The arrow's energy creates circular waves in the air as it ascends. Maya and Tarki look up, astonished and frightened by the power displayed. The arrow hits several gathered zombies dead on. The beam of light continues its path, disintegrating more enemies along the way. Azadin watches the result of his attack, showing who the strongest is. Several creatures are struck by precise attacks. Azadin watches a large group of enemies approaching the city. One creature is hit in the head and falls. He quickly prepares another arrow, while others watch. Mian asks if they aren't trying to hide that they're from the clan of the messengers, and the other confirms it. She thinks Azadin's bow is stronger than that of the other messengers, even though the only became one 3 months ago and has no experience. Tarki yells for them to block the attack while his companion expresses fear. Azadin seems thoughtful, starting to question the situation. The girl wonders how Elder Kazes managed to train a recruit so unsuccessfully up to that point. A large winged dragon flies over the village, now overrun by countless enemies. Azadin focuses, preparing to fire several arrows at once. The arrows strike and take down the approaching creatures. From a distance, he gets a creature with his weapon. Ishmael is surprised to see the crescent moon bow in her hands. She warns that they only need to avoid the paladin named Maya. A creature is hit by a powerful blow. Paladin Maya stands over the defeated creatures. Chico strikes a creature with a powerful blow. Kaka hits a creature squarely, knocking it down. From the rooftop, Azadin asks if it's clear yet who's the strongest. The dragon mocks the archer, saying he's full of himself for having shot a few arrows. It then becomes engulfed in a shining energy. Tarki has a bad feeling, while his companion stands nearby. A giant paw of a monstrous bear is revealed. A monstrous bear-like creature appears in a fury. Tarki says the name Kipple. They quickly prepare for an attack, delivering a powerful punch. The dragon says that those who hoard too much end up losing. Several smaller winged creatures appear, and the dragon regrets not having sent all the undead before. Tarki and Maya face a vast horde of enemies, including 2 large bears. One of the large bears is struck by an attack. Tarki uses his shield to block the bear's attack, and Maya shows concern. Azadin thinks the situation is bordering on cheating. He shows a serious and focused expression. One of the smaller winged creatures attacks another with force. Azadin steps over debris while looking down. As he falls, the two observe the battle outside through a broken window. Midia greets and Ishmael replies with hesitation. A warrior charges into battle and Maya asks if the creature seems dangerous as she faces it. Tarki is having great difficulty. The large bear prepares to attack him. He is soon struck by a powerful blow from the bear. Tarki, injured, is approached by a zombie. 2 creatures with glowing eyes come closer. Maya screams in panic. The monstrous bear and the zombies are surrounding Tarki. Maya raises her weapon, which shines with immense power. She then invokes the punishment strike with determination. She unleashes a powerful and divine attack against the enemies. Tarki shows surprise at the attack. Maya finishes her attack with a powerful and explosive flash. The battlefield is devastated, with many enemies defeated in a crater. Maya is exhausted and lying on the ground. Tarki is also on the ground, injured. Azadin is trapped and is surprised by the enemy's trap, mentioning the name Babunga. The dragon praises him, confirming that he is as good as they expected. Azadin looks at the dragon, which talks about the challenger being defeated. He then sees the horde of undead, and the dragon reminds him that many still remain. The dragon laughs arrogantly, challenging the people of Hybris. He questions the wounded warriors about being punished. Midiam shows her anger while holding her bow. The dragon displays the power of the clan of the messengers to the enemies. Azadin, holding an arrow, says that the dragon does not understand the true power of his clan. The dragon is surprised. He shows fear. Then he is wounded in his body. He ends up screaming in pain and falling to the ground. Azadin declares that this is the true power of his people, saying that their bows can even bring down the stars. 2 luminous arrows cut through the air at high speed. A winged creature is struck and another suffers an explosive impact. He explains that the first arrow hits the second, which in turn hits the air. He reveals that by order of the emperor, they even hunt divine kings. This is the people of Aragasa. He explains that clan of the messengers is how others refer to them. He continues, saying that among them, the correct name is Aragasa. The dragon, even in defeat, seems to recognize the identity. Azadin introduces himself as messenger number 108 of the Emperor. The wounded dragon murmurs the word messenger. He questions whether he truly belongs to his own people after what happened. Azadin replies that he does. The creature starts to laugh with a hint of madness while being watched. The dragon roars in agony. Even witnessing this, he remains calm. As he releases dark smoke, he declares he has waited for 10,000 nights. A long-haired woman appears, saying she has waited since childhood. She expresses that she hoped her people would come to free her from that miserable life. However, she laments that no matter how much she waited, they never came. Azadin assesses the situation and realizes that she is no longer alive, though she doesn't know it. With sorrow, he says he is sorry. His eyes shine as he acknowledges that she bore alone all the suffering of their people. The woman says that apologies are useless. She laments that her body and soul were corrupted by dark magic. In anger, the woman declares she will defeat everyone, for only that will ease her pain. Azadin watches her with a somber look. He then asks where her children are. She screams that they are not the children she wanted to have, but rather children of the Hybris. Azadin explains that because they inherited the blood of the Aragasa, the children will suffer too. He compares their suffering to hers, maybe even worse. Thus, they will continue to endure insults, just like her. He urges her to surrender and tell him where the children are, so her pain won't be repeated. He then invokes the name of Emperor Yaslat and swears that he will find and save them. The woman asks if he will save her children, and he answers yes. She reacts with anger, saying that is not possible. Azadin replies that it is possible. He affirms that his people have always achieved the impossible, and that continues to this day. He adds that even despised by the Wybris, their conviction never lost its brilliance. As he looks at the woman, the two allies appear. Ishmael comments that he speaks of conviction, but to him it's just a lie. Midiam, thoughtful, questions whether conviction truly exists. It is revealed that the messenger's duties exist because of the curse. A shadowy figure says that no one feels true pride, only seeking power and wealth, and that even the founders of the lineage were consumed by greed. It is revealed that recovering the record of the God King would break the curse, and thus all the suffering would be returned to the Wybris. Midiam thinks it is a cruel system where only those with power can act. She thinks that for this reason, Azadin's words must be lies, but wonders why. They seem so convincing when they come from his mouth. The woman remains silent, With a glow at her feet, the woman surrenders. Midiam and Ishmael are surprised. The one is enveloped in a brilliant light. Chains hanging on the wall are shown. The one is lying on the ground with a baby beside her. She feels that it is cold. A look of total resignation is shown as her hand reaches out toward the crying baby. Her hand softly touches the baby's face. She caresses the child's head. In the midst of a gentle light, the woman embraces the baby tenderly. Crying heavily, she lets out a sob. The woman feels warmth with the baby, who also only had her. The scene returns to her looking at the protagonist. Kneeling, she expresses confidence in her pride and conviction and makes a request. Crying, she begs him to save the children she could not protect. Ishmael notices that the undead are there and the dark magic is fading. They look to the sky, surprised, realizing that it is true and really possible. Midiam smiles, amazed that it is possible to save someone through conviction. Azadin holds her hand, promising that he will save the children. He asks how many children there are and if she knows where they were taken. The woman, crying, reveals that she gathered clues and hid them in a storage room so she wouldn't forget. He then asks where the power of the dark magic came from. She responds that it came from a whispering grimoire. Surprised, he learns that the book claimed to be a copy of the royal record of the God King. Suddenly, a flaming attack surrounds Azadin and the woman. Unfortunately, the fire hits the woman. He lets out a cry of frustration. She lies in his arms. A figure with a sadistic smile appears, calling Azadin knave. A man among a group of soldiers states that the woman is not one of their people. He mocks Azadin, saying that the archer doesn't even realize the truth because he cannot use magic. A crowd of guards, led by Calypso, approaches him. Azadin, surprised, asks who she is. Calypso introduces herself as the 106th in the lineage of messengers. She explains that she is hunting evil spirits and gathering copies of the Book of the Divine King. As Azadin questions what she is doing there, Calypso smiles, saying that rumors of his incompetence reach her ears. She adds that he can't even control the subordinate beside him, and that she couldn't remain silent in the face of such shame. He recognizes the people with Calypso, and Midiam asks the man if he doesn't understand the situation. Azadin sighs in understanding. He realizes they join Calypso to take revenge. Looking at the woman, he says she's become just an ordinary corpse and laments that they have more to talk about. Calypso calls Azadin the incompetent 108th, claiming the woman wasn't an Aragasa and that he didn't even need to get involved. She then suggests Azadin be grateful for having his efforts spared, and a blue aura forms in her hand. A piece of paper emerges from the woman's body. Calypso grabs it, smiling, and says she knew she would find it. A page from the Book of the Divine King floats toward Azadin. Calypso tries to stop the page, but it continues in his direction. Azadin receives the page of the book. Calypso yells in outrage, asking why the page went to him. Someone casts a spell, unleashing a powerful blue energy. The energy spreads, hitting something. The energy dissipates, leaving behind a small spark. Calypso and her group are drenched by rain. Calypso mutters, thinking they're being insolent. As she walks, she comments that it seems the true owner is being recognized and admires the impressive spirituality. Midiam, beside Ishmael, agrees, saying it's expected from the Book of the Divine King. The girl scolds Calypso and her group, telling them to stop defaming the Emperor, and questions whether they feel no shame for setting fire to the dry forest. Calypso, irritated, tells the girl to be quiet. She asks who the girl thinks she's talking to and becomes indignant. With red eyes, she declares herself a messenger, saying the girl is just a subordinate and has no right to tell her what to do. Midiam becomes furious, staring down Calypso. The companions mock the girl. Azadin remembers the girl's name, says he recalls it. He asks, somewhat frustrated, if she's referring to the fact that he was from a lower class than hers. Calypso asks what that has to do with anything. Azadin, with a smile, asks if she has a problem with the way he trains his subordinates, calling her Miss Junior. She laughs mockingly. She asserts her superior rank, saying he should learn to respect his elders. Ishmael mutters that it's just a fight between grumpy old folks. Then he says there's something more important. He asks if Calypso examined the dead woman personally and requests any information about the children's whereabouts, and Calypso is caught off guard. Calypso states the woman was from Hybris and not an Aragasa. Azadin firmly responds that yes, she's an Aragasa, and the girl beside him reacts in shock. Azadin lowers his head. He reflects that the woman endured 10,000 nights in the name of Aragasa and the humiliations cast upon the clan, and questions whether she would still be discarded for not having pure blood. He concludes that Aragasa's honor would be stained. Azadin tries to explain, saying it's hard to express in words, but there is something he has understood. The girl beside Azadin thinks that he has always been sincere. She keeps thinking that he lives with sincerity, holding on to his pride and honor until the very end, regardless of who stands before him. She also thinks that even in hard times, he maintains his will as a sublime form of aesthetics. One of Calypso's companions tries to hold in laughter. He and his group burst into loud laughter, mocking Azadin. Calypso calls him the biggest idiot in the clan for daring to speak about Aragasa's honor. She challenges him to a duel. Calypso proposes a wager, the copy of the Book of the Divine King he received and his subordinate the daughter of Aether. With a surprised expression, she hears him wagered his position and promised to reveal the children's location. Calypso smiles and asks if, should she win, he will become the 106. Azadin questions why the daughter of Aether would be included in the bet. Calypso explains that she wants to make her subordinate. She wants to teach her to respect her superiors and to value the clan's affairs, while the girl reacts with anger. Azadin looks at the girl, showing concern. He touches her head, asking her to forget about it. He tells Calypso that the Book of the Divine King has already chosen him and he has no reason to wager it. He adds that if they find the diary the woman mentioned, they won't need the information. Azadin tells her to back off because he's busy. She and her group are left speechless. Calypso, annoyed, curses his stubbornness, and her companions ask what they will do. She shows an angry expression, then explodes, offering a new bet. If she loses, she will find the children, free them, and take them to the clan's sanctuary. Azadin smiles faintly. He adds a condition. She must become the children's guardian and raise them as true Aragasas. Though angry, she agrees. Calypso asks how the duel will proceed, proposing a standard 100-step distance. Azadin refuses, saying that's too much work, and suggests getting straight to the point. Calypso then accepts the proposal. Azadin strikes quickly. Within seconds, he hits her face. She is thrown back by the impact, fallen and wounded by the blow. Her companions react in shock. Azadin remains standing, declaring it's over. He looks at them and demands that she keep her promise. Calypso is lying in the rain, and the men around her watch with concern. The protagonist orders them to check on the wounded, and one responds affirmatively, while another wonders if the woman was outside the range. One of them questions if a hidden weapon was used, and another adds, questioning the speed of the movement. The injured woman lies on the ground as Azadin asks if she will keep her promise. One of the men exclaims that a surprise attack shouldn't be accepted. The young man with the blindfold questions that statement. He explains that he attacked by surprise to bring down the opponent. The men present observe everything in shock. The wounded woman's face shows signs of pain. Sunlight appears over a scene of a destroyed camp, with carts and some people lying on the ground. The young man examines an injured man on the ground. He says there are no serious fractures, indicating the man is okay. Azadin asks if the wounded man can be placed in the cart, and the others respond promptly. As the wounded man is carried, his allies call out to him. Minion asks if he also studied medicine. He replies that it's not exactly that. The young man explains that when trying to look closely, his vision expands to the point that he can see bones inside the body with practice. The two young people seem surprised. Azadin points to where the next wounded person is while someone asks about a field of vision. The image shows two wounded individuals, Kaka and Chico, with abdominal injuries. Another injured person, Maya, has no serious wounds. Ishmael asks if the man needs to be kept alive, to which Azadin responds that it wasn't necessarily the plan. One of the men, thoughtful, mutters about the young man's stubbornness. The young woman shouts the names Azadin and Ishmael. She warns that they need to leave immediately. A cartwheel is stuck in the ground. The young woman looks back with concern. She comments that unexpected things keep happening. An image appears of a monster and a shadowy figure, labeled the Black Magic Disaster. Azadin holds a shining copy of the Book of the Divine King. A tribal figure displays a staff, and the text mentions the movement of the new gods of Kurt. Azadin wonders if all this might be a sign of great chaos. He replies to himself that the chaos has already begun. Calypso wakes up, seemingly frightened. One of the men greets her with relief. She asks if she's awake, and Azadin confirms. Calypso quickly sits up, on alert. Azadin hands her a box and comments that she's already back on her feet. Calypso, looking at the box, says it's time to keep the promise. The box opens with a glow, and the young woman murmurs in surprise, "This is." Inside the box, there is an ancient artifact found in the storage room, a scroll about children and a piece of paper with information from the merchants. Azadin declares he will check on the children of Salasmus and ask the young woman if she has any objections. She replies that she keeps her promises, and the other woman says she's counting on him. But, in a lighter moment, Azadin asks why she's being so formal. She explains it's because he's her senior. Calypso asks how he did that during the duel, referring to a specific technique. She realizes, surprised, that it was all the work of Elder Kazas. Azadin says it's not something he needs to explain, and that when the time comes, the Elder himself will act. He asks where she got the staff, and she explains that she took it from the cultists of Kurt. Azadin appears thoughtful and concludes that the object was mass-produced. Calypso becomes enveloped in a dark aura and says she will finish the task soon. The blindfolded young man simply agrees. He breathes a sigh of relief and stretches. His allies sleep peacefully inside the cart. A man is sound asleep, with a little drool dripping. Two people are resting on top of an animal. Azadin gives a slight smile. He comments that everyone worked very hard. The carts continue their journey under the sun, and the young man thinks that he should rest too. The carts and animals are stopped in an open area. Maya, surprised, asks if they really defeated all the undead. Two men respond that it was thanks to the hired mercenaries, but admit that most of the work was done by the young man. One of them explains that they found him under a dead tree, and when they removed him, the black magic disappeared. The armored woman expresses great relief. Azadin reflects that it was good they had agreed on the story beforehand. Kaka and Shiko ask where everyone intends to go. They explain they plan to stay at a nearby inn and return to the guild. Then they ask the officer if she plans to go straight to the Salasmus diocese. Maya reacts with a look of distress. She decides that they should go to Salasmus first, while she will go look for her father. Azadin asks if she will leave immediately, and she confirms, saying it's best to act quickly. She soon says goodbye, hoping they'll meet again if fate allows. Azadin wishes that the grace of the great archangel be with her. At last, she walks away. Midian asks if he is worried about the paladin, but he denies it. He lifts his gaze to the sky. He reveals that since morning, he can no longer hear the voice of the emperor. As Azadin and his companions prepare, someone offers them a horse. This man laments that the horse already has a scheduled delivery. Tarki questions whether the horse is refusing to obey the descendant of the great divine king. Ishmael notes that the horse didn't want to move, and Azadin ironically says it must be a noble. Kaka asks if he can speak with the pilgrim lord. He remarks that he doesn't seem like a common pilgrim, revealing that his sister can read fortunes and predict the future. Azadin reacts with surprise and irony, calling the siblings talented and con artists. Shika, serious, prophesies Azadin's future. She continues, saying he will become a great knight, or maybe he already is. Azadin reflects on being called a great knight by the emperor's messenger. He thanks the woman for her words. They say goodbye, saying, until next time. The blue sky and sun shine over the landscape. An owl takes flight under the intense sun. Azadin, with his hand on his forehead, wonders where the owl went. The boy alerts Azadin that the goats are suffering from the drought. He looks toward the horizon, thinking about the situation. The landscape is arid, and he concludes that they need to find water. Turkey comments that the situation wasn't this bad when he went east. The protagonist points to a city ahead, suggesting they head there. Dead fish lie in a puddle of dirty water. Azadin realizes the water is contaminated and unfit for the animals. He decides they need to hurry. A man argues that it's better to fish the creatures quickly before they spoil. The protagonist approaches the man, grabbing him. He observes people gathering fish and crayfish. Azadin thinks that if they keep fishing like that, they'll wipe out all the fish. Midian suggests that since the fish will die anyway, it's better to catch them now, and Azadin agrees. Ishmael suggests there should still be a well if the river hasn't dried up, but they recall that they need permission to use the water. He quickly looks to the side, noticing something. Turkey tells Azadin not to worry, as they have a night with them. The man confronts the villagers aggressively. He demands the villagers bring water from the well without complaint. Midian states that she'll educate the man later, and the young woman agrees. He grips the staff in his hand. Ishmael thinks he's pretending to be a blind pilgrim again. She smiles, commenting that the act works quite well. Azadin talks to an old woman. The boy reflects that Azadin's approach toward the half-bloods isn't that of a messenger, but rather his own unique way. Then he focuses on a worried eye, signaling a problem. It's revealed that Midian is intrigued by Azadin's way of acting. Azadin looks up. A hand reaches out as the young woman and the boy watch, surprised. The young woman shouts enthusiastically. The boy thinks he must not let himself be influenced by Azadin as he pulls the goat. A bustling city with houses and markets stretches ahead. Several red crayfish are cooking in a pot. People gather around a large pot with Azadin and his companions observing. A bearded man offers a generous plate of boiled crayfish, inviting them to take plenty. Azadin thanks him but expresses doubt about accepting so much food. The bearded man explains that the food will rot anyway if not eaten. He encourages them to treat it as a crayfish festival and enjoy it. Azadin sits down with a bowl of crayfish as the others watch. The young woman asks what the next step will be. While eating a crayfish, he declares that he needs to find the son of the deceased woman. He believes the child must be nearby. The two young people ask what they'll do once they find the child. Azadin explains that they can't take the child themselves, but the Coruscant Merchant Guild will take him to Calypso. The young mercenary remarks, surprised that Azadin really does seek out trouble. Azadin and the young woman show slight irritation. Azadin states that even if it's difficult, it's something a messenger must do. He reflects that if he keeps fulfilling his duty, the voice of the emperor will return one day. The path stretches through a forest. Calypso and her two companions walk, one of them questioning the truth of something. A man asks Calypso if she lost to the 108th messenger Azadin, and she confirms. Despite the defeat, one of the men asks if she really intends to surrender. Calypso's companion laments the effort it took to obtain the artifact and the concern of being surpassed by other messengers, recalling Calypso's goal to climb ranks. He acknowledges risking his life, confirming his own point. Calypso, who became a messenger purely through talent, grew irritated at being in the lowest level of the hierarchy. Turning her back, Calypso declares that a loss is a loss as her companions call out to her. She instructs one of the men to silence the Coruscant Merchant Guild. Calypso orders that everything regarding Azadin be kept secret, to the man's surprise. With a chilling smile, she reveals she doesn't want to be the only one to come out losing. She walks away, leaving her companions stunned. Someone greets the 106th messenger, Calypso. Calypso turns, surprised, and asks who he is. The mysterious voice introduces itself again as the voice of Ariel. Calypso asks in surprise if that is Ariel's voice. She replies that it is. The man tries to ask what happened, but Calypso tells him to be quiet. Calypso thinks the situation doesn't make sense. It is explained that the voice of the Emperor is a powerful magic that connects all spirits to manage information. This magic could only be created by the Emperor, and Ariel imitated it, even if only weakly. Calypso asks what is desired of him. A mysterious voice proposes something Calypso won't be able to refuse. A huge dark creature with a glowing heart appears. The scene shifts to a village with cracked ground and a bridge over a small stream. Two men in the village deny knowing the child being sought and tell him to look elsewhere. One of the men tries to mention the child from the Telbaran Guild, but the other insists on denying everything. Azadin realizes the men are avoiding the conversation and comments that the location matches the information. Tarkiv, irritated, orders the villagers to tell the truth. He questions why they refuse to answer when faced with his royal lineage. A frightened woman and an elderly man reveal that the village baker has contact with the Telbaran Guild. The old man points to a distant house with a chimney, indicating it as the baker's. Midian suggests they go straight to the bakery, and he agrees. Azadin reflects on the bakery. He thinks the child, being 8 years old, shouldn't have suffered. The baker, holding something in one hand, thinks about unexpected customers. The man then asks what they want. Frightened children are seen in a dark room. The group approaches the bakery door. Turkey tells the baker they are looking for someone, and he responds politely. Azadin hands over a paper with details about the 8-year-old girl they are searching for. The baker asks why they are looking for the child. Tarkiv questions the baker's curiosity, which he quickly denies. Sweating, he begins to confess. He reveals that the child they are looking for was already lifeless when she arrived. Tarkiv then asks about the other children. The baker says the children are orphans he took in, giving them food and work. Turkey comments that that's what the baker claimed. Azadin asks how the funeral was. The baker gets startled and questions the inquiry about a funeral. Azadin calls Tarkiv, who responds promptly. Without waiting for an order, he already attacks the baker. Soon, there's a scream of pain. Tarkiv demands to know where the funeral took place, explaining that there was an important promise. The baker, terrified, stammers that he will confess the truth. He threw her in the river, and Azadin reacts in shock. Furious, he asks if the man had lost his mind throwing her in the river. He realized that when the children couldn't take it anymore, they threw them into the river. Azadin thinks that in a world where the dead can return to life, this is horrifying. Meanwhile, he only watches the scene in front of him. Hearing all this, Ishmael cracks a smile. He then asks Azadin what he's going to do. He asks if he will save the other children, even though they're not his family. He continues by saying that the baker was negotiating with the Telbaran Guild, and that rescuing the children would cause conflict with the Coruscant Merchant Syndicate. It is explained that the Coruscant Merchant Syndicate is an organization that supports messengers, but with a strong commercial bias. It's unlikely they would risk conflict with another guild for children who aren't of noble lineage. Ishmael says the problem can't be solved with justice alone and asks for Azadin's wise opinion. Curious, he asks if Ishmael has always been like this, and Midian replies that she doesn't know, but she thinks not. He praises Ishmael for his accurate analysis, saying it's expected of a devout child. The baker is struck in the face by Tarkiv, who complains. Tarkiv kicks the baker for having disrespected the promise to protect the children. Azadin asks, surprised, since when Tarkiv became his boss. He assures them that he'll take the children to his mother's house, who needs servants and can provide a better environment. Midian finds it unbelievable and makes a peculiar comment, while the protagonist says everything ended well. The situation was resolved, with cries of pain coming from the man's bakery. Thanks to Tarkiv's persuasion, the baker signed a confession document. Now it only remains to inform the Coruscant Guild to take the children to Tarkiv's mother's estate. The village is seen at night with wagon movement. Two men work repairing a wagon. They look toward a group of people approaching. One of the men expresses surprise at seeing Azadin. Hearing his name, Azadin quickly turns around. One of the men asks if he doesn't recognize them, saying they always treated him kindly. Midian questions whether they are veterans, stating they are neither messengers nor devotees. The man with the sword mocks them, asking if they still haven't figured it out. He reveals that Azadin was expelled from the messenger's troop and tells him to come with them without resistance. Azadin remains silent, seemingly surprised. The man with the sword threatens Azadin, saying he has been expelled from the messenger troop. Azadin asks, shocked, if he's drunk. The men insist it's no joke and that his expulsion was a higher order command. One of them reveals that if they take him in, they themselves will become messengers. Azadin then asks if that's the reason they drew swords in the village, and the man confirms it. Azadin asks to borrow the staff, saying that as absurd as it may sound, he can hear the details. One of the men mocks him, asking if he forgot the times he got beaten and cried like a child. The protagonist replies that he remembers perfectly. He describes a memory and then expresses disgust as he recalls what happened. He makes a repulsed expression. The two men are shocked. Azadin prepares his staff. The two men charge forward. The man with the sword appears furious. His companion also has a determined look. Even without weapons in hand, Azadin defends himself with ease. The other man is confused. He then tries to use his ability. Even with bare hands, the protagonist grabs the sword. He quickly realizes the opponent is about to use his skill. Azadin then uses his ability, invoking Kaza-style poetry of flowers and winds. One of the men screams in disbelief at what he is seeing. The two men fall to the ground from the impact screaming. They fall onto the cracked earth, and one of them complains that it can't possibly be a cutting lightning spell. The man who was beaten thinks he had been told Azadin couldn't use magic. How then was he doing this? Azadin warns them not to die, at least one of them smiling with a dark aura surrounding him. The fallen man screams the name Twilight, looking shocked. The other man tries to advance, determined to stop Azadin. He tries to strike Azadin, but is repelled by an invisible force. The two men look at each other, shocked and terrified. Their eyes widen with fear. Azadin strikes the two men again with great force. They are thrown back by the impact. The men fall injured, one of them still screaming about the approaching dusk. Azadin stands over the fallen men who crack the ground beneath them. One of the fallen men complains about his bones and the other grumbles. The man reflects on the absurd speed of Azadin's magic combinations. He questions how Azadin is able to use magic if he claimed he couldn't. Azadin comments that the damaged terrain made it hard to go easy, but they're pretty tough to still be conscious. Smiling, he asks if they'll tell the story properly now, introducing himself as the 108th messenger, Azadin. A crow appears and hovers in the air. The crow lands on a branch, stating that something serious has happened. Azadin recognizes the voice of the emperor, which he thought had disappeared, and asks why it's speaking through an intermediary. The crow reveals that the patriarch expelled him. And that's not all. The crow announces that the curse of service has been activated, leaving Azadin in shock. Azadin's friends react in astonishment at the news. The curse is explained as a service contract between the messenger's clan and the emperor to enforce extreme loyalty. Then he even shows the curse being activated by the patriarch and elders with a chained figure. It's explained that the cursed person must produce a successor before dying. The scene then shows everyone listening as the crow explains the method for filling that position. Azadin asks, shocked, if he has been cursed. The crow explains that the curse will activate in a year, forcing him to have a child and then die, just like his father. Tarkiv and his companions react with astonishment at the mention of giving birth. Upon hearing this, one of them asks in disbelief if Azadin is going to have a child. He questions how a man could give birth. He tries to ask who the father is, but corrects himself to ask who the mother of the child is. Azadin is desperate, exclaiming over the situation, while Midian covers Tarkiv's mouth, trying to stifle her laughter. Azadin, annoyed, asks why the emperor created such an absurd contract. The crow explains that the penalty was set by the first patriarch and that he shouldn't be revealing this information. The crow hesitates to say more. With tears in his eyes, Azadin demands the crow tell him everything. The crow explains that the magic voice of the emperor has a condition of not directly transmitting certain information in order to preserve the eternal artificial spirit. The crow reveals that speaking to Azadin now that he's been deposed is corrupting his own existence, shocking Azadin's friends. One of the men realizes that the voice of the emperor is breaking its own rules to communicate with Azadin. He asks what makes Azadin so special. Frustrated, Azadin complains that the curse will make him pregnant and kill him, asking if they're joking. The imprisoned men accuse him of insolence for disrespecting the emperor's will. Furious, he replies that with all the problems he's facing, he won't talk about reverence and nobility. Tarkiv and the others wonder if it's really possible for a man to give birth, and the boy answers yes, because the protagonist was born that way due to the curse. Azadin, angry, demands to know why he was expelled and cursed when he was working hard in another country. The two imprisoned men are surprised. The crow reveals that Azadin's twin sister, Arael, defeated Elder Kenahan. It also says that Arael stole all recovered copies of the Divine King's book and fled. The crow concludes that Arael committed treason. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.